welcome. This is our Casper City Council work session for July 25th. We are going to change up our order just a little bit to help facilitate some folks that we have in the audience, but we'll start with meeting follow-up. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilors. Good evening. Mr. Mayor, I don't think I have anything for this element of the agenda.
Okay, did anyone have anything from last week's meeting? We're good? Okay, let's move on to, let's go down to number 5. We'll hit the banner health and fire agreements. Who took my pencil and gave me a pen that doesn't work? Where is she? Thief. Thieves. That's, yeah, can I get a lockbox for now on? Please.
Give you a little chain. That's what.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, let's go to banner health and fire agreement.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the opportunity that council has to consider almost like a sole provider relationship with Banner as it relates to ambulance services here in our community. Council is aware that there are a number of ambulance providers throughout the county. And from time to time, the providers of such services gets a little confusing and complex. And at the end of the day, there are times where we aren't sure who are coming to respond to our calls and stuff. This opportunity has a potential to clear that up and provide more consistency as it relates to providing those very needed services for a lot of the folks that we come in contact with through the fire department and the calls that they respond to, and often the police department as well. Allow for some other rather creative, in my opinion, innovative ways in which those services can hopefully be provided in such a way that we may not have to respond to every call that comes in across our radio, particularly as it relates to certain segments of our community. So we're hopeful that this will allow for some relief as it relates to calls that we need to respond to and have historically responded to every single time, as well as provide some consistent coverage from an ambulatory standpoint. We're also really hopeful that overlapping and so forth is reduced by virtue of implementing this type of an agreement and instituting a relationship like this. Council should also be aware that this is an agreement that actually has a 30-day notification clause to it should things not work out in the way that we expected or anticipated at the beginning of this relationship. And that gives us the opportunity to potentially move in a different direction if none of this works or the relationship becomes untenable for whatever reason. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk about this. I think it's like I said, an innovative way to consider a relationship, particularly for services that are so very critical for our community. We not only have Mr. Potter here tonight from Banner. We also have a number of fire service representatives, including our own, who from around the county. If indeed you needed to ask questions of any of those folks too, we are happy they're here to help us with this conversation. Mr. Mayor, we have a couple ways to go with this tonight. We could have our Banner CEO walk us through some of these aspects. We could certainly have our own chief as well. I'd recommend maybe starting with Lance and go from there.
Sounds good to me. Lance, are you ready to come and speak with us?
Sure.
Please come down to the podium, yes, sir, if you don't mind.
Mayor, good to see you. Thank you for
Thank you.
And members of the council. As was said just recently, what we're trying to do is create an agreement which helps us to protect the ambulance services and the emergency response for Natrona County. Over the last 10 years, we have had 10 ambulance services across the state shut down, 5 of those since 2021. High fixed costs, uncertain payers and staffing that is difficult to match makes it a very hard business to run. And so in order to protect what we've got here in Natrona County, because I think we've provided a very high level of response here for many, many years, in order to keep that strong and in order to continue to provide that level of care, we partnered with our partners over at Casper Fire Department, the town and the city, to how do we protect this from further erosion and make sure we're not one of those ambulance services that shut down in the state of Wyoming. And so we've come up with an agreement, which we think will reduce expenses for the city. It will actually improve service for the residents of our community, and then make sure that we as an ambulance company can continue to maintain the high level of care and high level of service that we have in the past. Running an ambulance service is not inexpensive. One ambulance alone is $300,000, and that's for a very basic model. And this year alone, Wyoming Medical Center will be purchasing 3 of those ambulances. So it's very expensive. In addition, it's hard to recruit EMTs. That is a constant challenge that we all have to look at, and how do we do this? And what we'd like to do is protect that market share so that we don't have an erosion in our ability to financially support such an expensive program. And we have a group of people here that can answer questions better than I can. But from the city side, as Carter said, what we hope to have is an ability for the fire department leadership to be able to look at a call and determine whether or not they should respond with a fire truck. A classic example is the nursing home resident that falls, hits their head. Do we really need a fire truck to respond to that with a full team of firefighters, or is an ambulance enough to be able to assess that patient medically and get them to the right level of care? So they would have then that decision rights to decide whether they should respond or not, but we would always be that primary responder in those medical emergencies. In addition, what that provides for the hospital then is to protect that market share. Because it is so expensive, our worst fear is that we get yet another ambulance company within city limits that then starts to compete for those calls. Competition leads to a couple different things. Number one is people start racing for calls. This happens in other cities where you have multiple ambulances and everybody wants that call because it's part of their business. And so you have races to a scene, you have races for transfers, and that can lead to accidents, but it also leads to miscommunication with other first responders. And I think one of the things that we've developed over the year, as we talk to Casper Fire Department, Mills Fire Department, Evansville Fire Department, all of which are represented here today, is close communication and partnership in this highly complex world. We look at Evansville and Mills, and do we need to also respond to calls in those communities? Those are conversations we've been having for a long time. When they should be the first person to respond and call us only if necessary. That allows them to care for their communities and to have that revenue and to be the first responders within their communities. We're very willing to do that. If you add yet another ambulance company into that mix, that becomes very difficult communication and we may not have that same level of support. In addition, I think it helps lower the cost by having an exclusive arrangement as well, because as soon as you put another group in here, there are 2 complete infrastructures with, again, high capital cost items that then go on the bills that our patients get. Your commercial payers then have to have that in their billing structure and what it costs them. That's then passed on to business owners. In addition, if that were to happen to be a for-profit ambulance service, the way they make money is through very aggressive billing and very aggressive collections. That's not good for our patients and that's not good for our community. And so we want to be able to avoid that by continuing the great collaboration and partnership that we've had in the past. So I think the beauty of it as well is this collaboration has led to an agreement that is going to actually improve the response times, improve the way that we respond to the community, and then also have quality oversight. So we actually have already functioning right now a quality group that gets together, and this will now be enhanced through this agreement, where we look at response times. We look at reviews of how did that response go? Could we have been done better? Then there's a level of accountability and mutual stakeholding in this agreement so that we all work towards a common cause. So again, it's an exclusive agreement with us, but it is going to benefit, I think, both financially as well as operationally, both the city of Casper as well as the Wyoming Medical Center Ambulance Service. And so we would love to answer your questions with that introduction. And if you would like, we can have each of our members stand up and introduce themselves so you know who's here and who best can answer your questions. Mr. Mayor.
Can you please do that? Yep.
Chief Jake Black.
Will Gay, Fire Chief, City Mills.
William Olson, Fire Chief, Evansville Fire.
Ellie Beckstead, EMS Manager, Wyoming Medical Center.
Good evening, Jim Wenham, Director of Ambulance Services, Wyoming Medical Center.
Good evening, I'm Dr. Alex Bolgan. I'm the emergency doctor. I'm the medical director for all of the ground services here in Montgomery County.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, any questions?
Yeah, I'm sure we do. I have a comment. I'll get started with, one of my concerns when I heard about this coming out was, okay, we put all our eggs in one basket. Now there go our rates. And we have a fiduciary duty to our constituents to make sure that those numbers stay down. And anytime anyone corners a market, they have an ability to do that. I was put at ease in our leadership meeting, and I do understand we have an out on the clause. We've also got the ability to monitor what we're doing. So as long as this is truly the level of care is what our constituents need, and the billing is appropriately done in a way that we're not jacking rates on people. And I've been after the chief, I think, since I became the mayor, about to stop sending these engines out on every single call that we have. So that's going to save us a lot of wear and tear on our most expensive piece of equipment and some time. So I'm 100% behind it. I just wanted to put it out there that we will be keeping an eye on rates and making sure that the benefits for our community are what they are, in fairness.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think the real risk to rates is the introduction of a possibility of a for-profit ambulance company coming in here. Jim Wenham ran the largest ambulance company in Oklahoma. We recruited him from Oklahoma. He can talk to that, what happens in communities that get for-profit ambulance services. Their rates go up, their response time, less communication. That's what we're trying to prevent.
Excellent. Amber, please, Ms. Pollock.
Thank you. I would actually be interested, Jim, if you wouldn't mind, to speak a little bit more to that experience in Oklahoma.
Sure. Would you like to?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you.
No, not in a work session. No, just grab my attention. Or you got something? Sorry. Yeah, I haven't been using it in the work sessions because it's a little looser.
Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Jim Wenham, resident of Casper for about 6 months now, come from Oklahoma. I was the CEO for EMSA. So just to give you a little bit of background on that, that's one of the first public utility models where they combined the public and the private. And during my tenure as the CEO, we had a private contractor for 40 years on that model. And during my tenure there, we actually fired the for-profit provider and took it over ourselves because of the problems of, they had a set rate. They couldn't change the rate, but they were making their money by being efficient on the backs of some of the members that were working in the streets. The reason an ambulance service exists is to take care of patients. That's our goal, and looking for areas to make money off some situations like that, and this is my personal opinion, doesn't work. So not-for-profit organizations, I will not work for a for-profit organization in my position. I've worked with fire departments, I've worked with not-for-profit and public utility models, and I've worked a short time with a private for-profit, and I can tell you the inner workings of those, and I left because it wasn't about the patient. So the concern that you have always when another ambulance service comes in, there's a finite set of money that we have in this area. Calls ebb and flow based on some seasonal stuff, but there's pretty much the same amount of money. So when you have two competing ambulance services come in, the competition will try to cream skim and try to take the calls that pay. And then that results in loss of money for how we're doing things and in rates. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work out. And there are plenty of areas that have went to the exclusive market providership. And this gives the city, gives the organization to actually have a say-so and be able to look at that and be able to step and change at a moment's notice. And we also fired in 30 days and took over in 30 days after we saw that. So this gives you a great opportunity to look and see how your service is.
Lisa?
Chief Black.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Was there any other questions for Jim before he walks all the way back up? I should ask, I guess. No? Okay, thank you. I didn't want to wear you out. We have EMS here if you get tired though.
So I guess I have a couple of questions. Do you have kind of an estimate about what this is going to save your department in man hours? And then are you also going to need to have somebody just manning the calls that are coming in to decide which direction to go? Because right now I believe that you guys are just getting a call and you're going, whereas now you're going to have to screen. So do you have to dedicate somebody to just screening the calls? And then do you have an estimate on about how much you're anticipating this would save the department?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, that's a great question. To start with, my company officers that run my engine companies and apparatus, they've gone through 10, 15, 20 years of training, and they're triaging calls all day long, every day. They're listening to call notes, where it's at, what is being said through the dispatch, and they're determining from that information right there if they're going emergent or not. So I trust my captains and their training, what we put them through on a daily basis to get to make those decisions, to be able to make those decisions and decide whether or not it's appropriate for us to respond and if the medical center can handle it. As far as how much it's going to impact us and reduce our call volume, it's hard to say right now. Right now, we're trending at a 48% overlapping call volume. So 48% of the time, we have 2 or more calls going on in the city with 2 different entities. So it's going to impact us by lessening that overlapping call volume, hopefully. And we're going to be able to trend over the next few years and see the benefits and actually put some numbers there.
Jenna?
Okay. I'm assuming since you all are here, you support this and you're for this contract.
Absolutely. In my career, Mr. Mayor, councilors, in my career here, we have never had a consistent, solid model of cooperation between fire and EMS. We've always worked together. We've always worked well together, but this gives us the opportunity to give a better service to the community. This gives us stake in the game to say, hey, will you do this? Will you follow this? For instance, we're going to have the most stringent response times in the entire nation in Casper, Wyoming. Is that correct, Jim?
I know of nowhere else in the United States that has 4-minute response time.
So for our community, that's a huge win for our citizens. For that baby not breathing, for that heart attack, for that person that's been in a car wreck, that immediately increases their chance of a response and survival. My number one goal is taking care of our community and making this place better. This partnership looks to do that, and I do support it.
Anyone else? Counselor Haskins?
Do you guys do all the non-emergent calls as well, or is the non-emergent just ambulance at this time? For like the routine?
Mr. Mayor, council. So it depends on the nature of the, a lot of times if it's a non-emergent, somebody, fell, we may still roll that way just in case, because you don't know why they fell, if they had a syncopal episode, lost consciousness, you don't always know. So sometimes you end up starting non-emergent with the ambulance and upgrade during the call notes. And that's where I leave it to my company officers to make those decisions.
Okay. So quick follow-up. It says that they will determine if it should be staffed by just BLS staffing, which I have BLS, so I feel like that's a terrible idea, unless it's not a terrible idea. What are your thoughts on that?
So from my understanding, they will always have at least a paramedic on the ambulances, correct?
So our current model is we have a paramedic and a basic on each rig.
Even the non-emergent?
Her question was, even in the non-emergents, do you still have an EMS and a,
As the system is right now, I think the contract has a clause in it to look at that in future because pretty much the rest of the United States has went to a tiered system in a cost saving manner. Where the medical directors involved in a BLS company would only be sent on non-life threatening emergencies, like a 3-day-old insect bite, maybe a minor type of stub toe, which happens quite a bit, or a transfer from a hospital to a nursing home or vice versa, that is a non-emergency.
Mr. Kathy?
Noticed I was looking at the response time map and it looked like basically just the very core of Casper is the only place that we have a 4-minute response time. You get out south on Poplar, not even all the way to Outer Drive. You get east of Outer Drive and southeast out towards the Country Club, the Centennial Hills area. Those are all 7-minute response times. I was thinking that before, when fire used to respond to these, it was way less than that, like 3 to 4 minutes when the trucks were rolling. Do you still anticipate doing that in some of those areas, or are we strictly going to rely on 7-minute response times?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, that's a good question. The fire department will not sacrifice any of our standards. We will always be there 4 minutes or less 90% of the time. That 7-minute map, that holds the ambulance service to be anywhere in that boundary within 7 minutes. Currently, it could take 10, 12 minutes to get out to SOV or Far East. This has increased that to where they're going to have to respond quicker and strategically place themselves around the city to make sure that they're ready to get to those areas.
The other thing I noticed when I read through is there are a lot of equipment requirements and staffing requirements. And by equipment, I'm not only talking about just the vehicle itself, but equipment in the vehicle and staffing levels. What happens if they don't meet those? I mean, is our only recourse then to go through the review committee, and then they have 4 months to solve it, and then another review, and they've got 2 more months to solve it. And then if it's still not solved, then what, terminate the contract, which would be another 30 days. So you're 7 months into potentially a non-compliant situation. Are there any other liquidated damages or anything that go along with this contract?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I believe that right there would be an extremely isolated incident. We don't run into a lot of incidents where they don't have the equipment that they need. But that's current time with Lance in charge, with me in charge, with them in charge. Who's to say somebody comes in after them? We need to have a standard where it's there. And if it is a severe enough standard, then it's going to be one of those emergency meetings. Hey, this is a big issue. This happened. We need to correct this immediately type of a deal. I don't think there's any room for waiting around 7 months to get something corrected. And I would believe that Lance is on the same page with that.
Well, and it sounds like they're about to spend $1 million and some very nice equipment, so.
Yeah, and that wasn't just directed at you, Lance or Carter, either one could have answered, but those were the things looking at the contract that I noticed, and I'm used to something more on that tail end of it as to remedies if there are issues, so.
I do believe that the evaluation committee and identifying problems is gonna be an organic process where we're gonna figure out the best way to take care of problems, to make them efficient and have a good process. We're gonna be working together closely with that over the next year to make sure that it's efficient and doesn't take a lot of time.
Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, did you have something?
I can wait until Councilor Jen.
Okay.
I just had a question too. So, special events and services that you guys provide now, is that gonna be affected with this contract?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, no. We try and provide services and apparatus when we can to special events. But we can't always be there. So it's not gonna impact us one way or another.
Okay.
Councilor Bond?
Thank you, Mayor. No question, but just an observation. I appreciate the advantages that you pointed out in the memo. You know, the increased communication, better efficiency, the collaboration and so forth. And in terms of the efficiency, my understanding is, I assume this information is correct, but I haven't verified it, but I understand there were 20 ambulance calls to the meet and makeup event on last Friday, and I don't know how much that impacted the city services, but that seems excessive to me, that one big event. So I don't know what went wrong there, but that to me is a little alarming. But again, just to say, I appreciate the advantages that you've sought out, and I think this looks like a good thing for the city.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, thank you very much. And one thing to point out with that, when we do have a system overload, that's why it is so important to have our mutual aid relationships
Absolutely.
and be able to depend on them and them depend on us. That works for the entire community.
Yeah.
Which, before I turn Carter loose, which brings me to something I was gonna save for the end of the night, but I'm sure you firemen are gonna be out of here as soon as this subject is done. And I got a phone call this morning from the mayor of Barnum, Mr. Boyer, who was just ecstatic and, couldn't praise our department enough. And I'm sure he felt the same way about all the other departments that sent their folks out to help him in that emergent situation yesterday. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that while you folks were in the room. So with that said, go ahead, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Chief, do you mind talking a little bit about the possibility where your folks may not have to roll onto a scene and the hospital may have it completely covered to where we don't have to go to every call? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, Mr. City Manager. So we get a lot of calls through the day that cause a lot of that 48% overlapping, where, for instance, at a nursing home where somebody, they've just had an issue going, they need a transport to be checked out, and it ends up being called in 911, and we roll an ambulance and a fire truck. There's no emergency. All that was needed was the ambulance to transport them from the nursing home back to the hospital. That's one of those instances. This is going to put some structure into that system so that when those nursing homes call dispatch, they're directed to the non-emergent transport line and utilizing that. Another instance in that core area, that 4-minute response area, that's Station 1 and Station 3's area. And those are the two busiest areas in the entire city. I mean, those companies are running all day long, all night long. And a lot of times it can be something like somebody did stub their toe, or the air hose on their oxygen regulators kinked and they don't want to get up and unkink it type of a deal. There's certain things like that that come in that an ambulance crew can go and take care of without having to spend multiple resources. And then that frees up everybody as a whole to take in that next baby not breathing, heart attack, emergent, critical calls.
Any other questions, counselors?
Me. I have a question for you, Lance. Thank you, James. So is this gonna fall under the billing through Banner? So for the lower income patients, it will fall under the charity program that Banner offers? Or is it going to be a separate ambulance billing in and of itself? Hence the nonprofit and making money off the poor people.
Mr. Mayor, Council, very good question. No, all that billing will be handled through Banner Health. So there's not gonna be an outside billing company that will do that. It will, patients who qualify for the charity care program, which we implemented a year ago, will also qualify for this.
Okay.
And so, yeah, absolutely. We'll handle all that. That's the nice thing of managing the entire thing and not just having multiple parties that can cause issues.
Anyone else? Okay, so I'm assuming you're, would like to move forward for approval, just see some thumbs up, if you folks are okay with that? All right, very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, the next step would be then to take this forward to a formal meeting wherein, on the floor, council will give formal adoption.
Right.
Okay.
Very good. That'll be as soon as next week, or that'll be down the road a little bit?
Within the next few weeks,
Okay.
for sure.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for coming. We sure appreciate you giving us your time. All right, let's move on to the North Platte River Park #2 master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. We have the opportunity to get our first draft review, if you will, pertaining to the work that Liz and her team and Beth and her team have helped us facilitate with the consultant whom you're going to meet here in just a minute. Wherein council wisely asked for a development plan pertaining to the area north of the event center and north of the site of the sports ranch, which is underway. It is, in my opinion, a very important step to take, given that this will be, in my estimation, an opportunity that doesn't come to every community so often or too often, where a council like yourself gets to lay out the map, if you will, for a business sector that has every possibility of being very vibrant and being, new on the landscape of a community, and certainly done right in a very planned, methodical way. And so this is that opportunity for Casper, in my humble opinion. And I think we have a wonderful chance at the offset here, or the onset, I should say, to ask questions, to consider this very methodically, and then move forward in partnership with the private sector to get development done in a way that benefits our community in very positive possibilities. And so this is your first opportunity to look at this draft. This is 111 acres that you have the opportunity to consider the steps we should take in making this new business sector of our community happen. My hope is that you'll ask questions, that you'll give direction where you feel necessary. And then what I hope will happen is our consultant will take that feedback and input, put together whatever amendments and changes need to be had, and then present us with a final draft here in a couple weeks. I'm hopeful from there, we can not only start offering some of these properties to the private sector for sale, but we can also start making real concrete plans in terms of getting infrastructure in place and the adequate support from that standpoint. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if I can turn the time over to Beth and our consultant, I'd sure appreciate that.
Good evening, Beth.
Good evening. So with us today, I have Josh Olheba with Ayers and Associates. They're the consultants that the Casper area MPO selected for this project. This one present the draft plan. Just to let you know, this has not gone out for public comment yet. After speaking with the city manager today, we decided to wait till next week so they can incorporate your feedback tonight into that plan. before it goes out to public comment. There is a 30-day public comment period, and then we'll have that final report to you. So I'll just turn over to Josh here.
You do realize, however, this is being aired and the public will be seeing this.
It is, but they'll have 30 days to make any emails, Facebook comments, whatever they want.
Oh, and they will.
Let us know what their thoughts on it as well, and those are incorporated into the final plan, as part of our process.
And they will.
Yeah. They will.
Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a moment while I get the technological one here. Thank you. All right, thank you again, Mr. Mayor, councilors. It was a pleasure to be here before you. As noted, we're presenting kind of the initial draft here of the North Platte Park Master Plan. My name is Josh Alhava. I'm with Ayers Associates. We are a multidisciplinary firm with roots here in Wyoming. Our Vice President of Development Services, Matt Ashby, is actually headquartered in Cheyenne, so not too far. And then our partners on the project, WWEC Engineering, are based locally here. This thing's working. Again, really want to thank you all for having us here. As the city manager noted, you all are taking a very good proactive approach where you're able to help guide development in such a large property instead of having development happen to you. So you're getting out ahead of it and being able to think through some of those logistical details to be able to entertain different options. And we gained 3 different things here. Take your time, do that. So here's the project area as noted, about 111 acres. And again, the reason we're here, the reason we're discussing this is that there has been development interest on the property. The other part is we really want the opportunity to create and build cohesion between this site as well as the adjacent properties. The Wyoming Center, Casper Skeet Model Plane facilities to the northeast, and really just ensure that everything is kind of collaborative and working in nature that they complement one another. The other thing we want to do is make sure that whatever happens here also ties into the overall vision of the community and all the efforts that's been done down in the downtown area. Sorry. I'll lean in a little bit more as I
Can you hear him okay down there? Oh, we're fine.
Perfect. So we'll change here, had the concept plan at the very end, but talking with staff, it was a good idea to kind of bring it up to the forefront, just so you can see kind of where we've come to. And then we can backtrack and decide how do we get here. So first thing we have here is the concept plan. So this was a sketch rendering that illustrates what the build out of the site could look like based on the land use types and vision that was discussed with the stakeholders and the public. It is important that we do not look at this as plan that's set in stone. That's why it is more in that sketch concept stage. It's really to help guide those discussions with the private development community and entrepreneurs as they come forward with projects. The other idea is to be flexible. Market conditions change over time, especially in our current economic situations in the country. And so we want to make sure that whatever plan you're looking at, that it serves as really that foundation to allow for additional flexibility. And then we'll talk in this concept in greater detail, so I won't go over all the individual sites quite this time. So the stakeholder workshop, we held the first workshop mid-May. This really helped establish the parameters of the land use considerations and the vision and values. The stakeholders laid the foundation for the public workshop that was then held just a few weeks later in June. And the bullets here are really kind of the key takeaways that came out of that stakeholder discussion. One is that the views and open lands really define the character of this area. If you've ever been up in that site, you just look out to the north, you look out to the south, and just beautiful vistas, and to the south overlooks the city, and it's just a beautiful view. And then also the need to leverage and complement the existing attractions in the area. The other one is recreation continues to be a primary focus, and you'll hear that recreation is kind of a theme that we continue to hear throughout every engagement, every discussion. But it's the type of recreation that is the distinguishing factor. Access and circulation are complicated. Any of you have been up there during an event, and when it lets out, you know that there's a lot of traffic and a lot of control that needs to be put in place and kind of management to go along with any future development. The other, kind of like mentioned earlier, you know, don't just develop to develop, but really be purposeful. And I think that's why you all took it upon yourselves to guide staff and have us work on this initiative for you. And then the last one is the area needs to be named and brand. When you hear Platte River Corridor, you hear the, you know, that kind of terminology name, people don't really understand what it is when you're referencing a subdivision filing. So branding is a really important one. And some of the exercises we did. Go. The first one was our Mad Libs exercise. There we go. And this really helped us get down to the vision and values. You know, what does this place want to be? What is it defined as? And the stakeholders really helped kind of narrow that down. And then we had further discussions with the public. The other is the 5-minute master plan. This really got into the framework and the foundation for the land uses. So as you can see there's a picture with all the stickies. Some of the stakeholders drew pictures, and then what we did is really consolidate all those ideas as a foundation to then present to the public to have them fine tune and adjust within kind of those parameters. Another exercise that we did complete is really looking at what the implementation strategies would be if this plan was put into fruition today. You know, what is it the city needs to do to get to that point? And so that really helped us build out the implementation strategies, which we'll highlight here in a little bit, and it's also located in the draft report. The next workshop was in June 8th, and that was the public workshop. So the advertisements you can see there, various advertisement strategies, really reaching a diverse group of individuals, targeted emails to business and stakeholders that were really close to the property as well, to really make sure we're getting those adjacent neighboring property input. Had approximately 30 attendees come out for the event, had a lot of great conversations. The night that this occurred was the night a big storm came through, so it was impressive to see, you know, 30 people come out. We heard that was actually a very good turnout for a land use public workshop, so we were excited to hear that. And we did hold the meeting at the National Historic Trails Interpretive Center, so definitely want to thank them for being great hosts and allowing us to have the space. A really great facility. The first time I was actually in it, and spent quite a few hours just walking around and enjoying all the exhibits. Here's a few images kind of showing the various activities. So had a lot of different activities that we did to get public input and guidance that really helped inform this master plan. So this plan is really driven based on stakeholder public involvement and input, as well as, you know, best practices for the community and the unique characteristics of the community. Some of the activities include interactive polling, visual preference survey dot exercises, which you can kind of see there on the left in the middle, and we'll see another slide with those. Land use framework compilation exercises. And then we had a lot of one-on-one and small group conversations just throughout the evening, just talking with groups, hearing their stories, which it's always great to hear individual stories, especially people that have been in the community for so long. What you see here before you is the land use framework and transportation recommendations. So these were two of the dot and kind of sticky note exercises that really helped us narrow down those specific types of uses and those design elements, as well as kind of those transportation options that could be explored for the site. Some of the things that we really received comments on were truck stop versus convenience store. There's concern about truck stops versus having convenience stores, more support for the convenience store approach. Complementary restaurants and services that really complemented the other uses in the event spaces out there. Scaled employment and business opportunities. Again, managing the event center traffic was a big one, and really creating a safe place for pedestrians, making sure that if there are activities on the north and south side of the roads that people can get across without having to get in their car and drive across the street. One interesting idea that came up was a downtown shuttle. So that way, if you're up there at an event, school goes there with their buses, nowhere else to eat, or, you know, shopping in between, the bus could shuttle people down to the downtown area, have a couple stops, and then take people back up, and a few stops up and around the side as well. So that was a really good idea that came out of the public engagement stakeholder discussions. The other is the inter and intra-connected trails. So really tying into the great trails that are already in the vicinity, you know, tied into the trail center and also down the hill towards the parks. And then again, recreation uses. As I mentioned earlier, there's a big interest in recreation uses and the types of recreation uses that could be seen in this space. So before we get to the actual land use framework, you gotta look at utilities and see what is possible and what is not possible. Otherwise, we're just putting notes on a page and it has no merit or basis in an actual real life scenario. Sanitary sewer system is probably the most critical infrastructure element that is lacking in the space. As you can see here on the diagram on the right, I know it's a little hard to see, but that line that runs all the way down Poplar and all the way up, that's the sewer line. So that would be a new sewer extension. And so that extends from about the Hampton Inn, kind of next to the Crossroads Park, all the way up and into the site. Water mains. So based on analysis, the water mains are appropriately sized in the space. However, they may need boosters or some other elements to get the pressure where it needs to be, just based on a little bit more detailed engineering refinement. And then transportation systems, as mentioned earlier, a lot of traffic patterns, a lot of movement, especially at the Poplar events, drive kind of intersection. So what you have here is a land use scenario. So similar to the concepts that was seen earlier, this really creates that framework and pulls in all the insights from the public, the types of uses, really from that broad high level spectrum. And I'll talk about each of the individual land use categories here in just a minute. But really the idea here is that it's created as a bubble diagram so it can be flexible. You know, some of those spaces may need to adjust a little bit to accommodate a specific use, or if a developer or investor comes in and wants to build something that extends across a line, it's a bubble diagram, the line can move to accommodate that specific use that meets the goals and the intent and what the council's looking for. What you see with the yellow line work there, potential access, vehicular circulation patterns, really controlling those intersections to help with overall traffic flow, and then also pedestrian movement. And the pedestrian circulation is shown there in the blue dotted line. Again, another really important element, keep people moving around, even though there are, you know, limited months on when people are probably likely to be out and about walking around up in this area with the wind, weather, and everything else. The red circles are really those critical intersections. Those are where you're going to see the enhancements to vehicular circulation, but then also the pedestrian crossings, making sure that they are a safe place for pedestrians to cross. As I mentioned, it's going to go over the different land use categories. So I'm going to get caught up on my page here. So destination retail, I think I have a general idea of what that is, but a lot of things that were discussed include the Shields, the Bass Pro Shop, really, again, tying to that recreational route that is Casper and that a lot of residents were interested in for the space. There can be other types of destination retailers that really fit. And then also the highway services. And those are really concentrated more on that west side, closer to the interstate, easier access on and off the interstate. And highway services, convenience store, strip commercial, drive-through, coffee shop, or other drive-through uses. And then you get into the event center village. And that is pretty much right in the center, just off the northeast corner of Poplar and Events. And so think of that as a couple hotels, could be destination hotels with event center space, could be the large hotels with water parks. We heard that come up from a number of residents, where they're really built around kind of a central focus point, kind of a central community gathering space. And then we have innovation employment, a place for, you know, new entrepreneurs, business to kind of thrive and grow in the community. And then we get into the recreation. So we've broken out recreation into 3 different categories. The first one being the signature facilities. And that's really more or less like an extension of the existing event center. They give different event opportunities, museums, other types of facilities that are more in that public-private, nonprofit, private side of the industry. And then we have outdoor facilities for recreation and then open lands. And again, those areas are identified on here. One thing we talked with staff earlier on is this idea of creating a little bit more of like a flexible space within this land use framework. So we're going to adjust that a little bit. So that way the space can be adjusted in more of an opportunity zone, if you will. And so that way it can ebb and flow with the needs and the desires of the community. So diving into the vision and values, a very clear vision was generated based on the values of the community. And this came out of the 2 workshops. We were linking these together. It really helps inspire the action and builds the momentum forward. So that way, as you get moving down the way, if you run into a roadblock or another challenge, you have something to fall back on, those base values. And the first one is that unparalleled perspective. As I mentioned earlier, amazing views throughout this area, connection to open space and trails, and a lot of the work the city's doing down along the riverfront. And so there's a lot of opportunity there to really tie to that. The next one is the Ventures Unite. So thinking again of that innovation employment sector and having opportunities for entrepreneurs and other leaders to really connect, start businesses, thrive, and become a part of it. And then lastly, go do something, again, tying to the recreational desires of the community for the area and really tying into existing uses, building that synergy and complementary uses, but then create a space where you can be there all day. You have activities for all ages. Your older siblings at an event, something to do for the younger kids or vice versa. And this kind of gets to the idea of branding that we talked about earlier. As we were talking with a lot of residents and they didn't quite understand, where is this area or what are we talking about here? We thought to ourselves, okay, branding is important, telling the story is important. So yeah, let's tell a story. And one of our implementation action items is to kind of define that branding, that messaging that you want for the property. So that way, when you're talking with investors and developers, you have something to fall back on. And so I'm just going to read a little blurb of this. But really, we kind of dubbed the area Casper Highlands. And again, that's just an internal kind of working discussion and something to kind of mull over, think about, and then utilize as part of your future efforts with branding and messaging for the site. But the saying is, welcome to Casper Highlands, the Oil City's Experience Adventure District. Situated on the bluffs overlooking the North Platte River with sweeping views of downtown and Casper Mountains. The Adventure District is home to one-of-a-kind experiences that embody the Wyoming lifestyle. And then we highlight the various uses that are there right now, such as the Fort Wyoming Center, Sports Ranch, the National Historic Trails Interpretive Center. I can only say that so many times without getting tongue tied. And as well as the other uses, the Boomtown Motocross, Casper Speedway, Air Modelers Park, and the Ski and Trap Club. So next are implementation strategies. So we're kind of getting towards the end here. If you're a slide counter like I am, there's about 4 to 6 more slides. So implementation strategies. The first one is plan. We use a 3P2C approach. And for planning, it includes the companion planning documents. So really, what are the next steps? The more detailed engineering reports, more detailed assessments and analysis that need to take place. Next is the program, and this relates to the activities. And these are what can be interweaved with the property, with the systems and activities throughout the Casper area. Third P is policy. As its own, this covers the key guide points that will help shape decision making over time. The first C is code. So of course, design regulations, code updates, anything you need to really help set the stage for the development that you're looking for the site and how you want it to grow and develop. And then lastly, capital. And this is the infrastructure, the financing that comes into play and how you get done across the finish line. And so here are the 8 action steps tied with strategy 1 of the plan. And I won't read through them, but they are in your report. And just summarized here as the headers. And then under strategy 2 of the program, we have about 3 action steps. And again, all these action steps were developed discussing with the stakeholders as well as the input from the public regarding their priorities for the site. Next, strategy 3 policies. So there's really just one key policy, but it includes 4 different elements, and that's the good neighbor policy, incentive policy, nuisance policy, and property sales lease policy. And just think of it, there's existing uses out there. They make noise. You get new businesses, new activities coming out to the space. The first thing you'll hear in a couple of years is, I hear guns shooting off every day. Well, the ski club's been there. They've been there way before you. So it's establishing some of that information so you can communicate that to prospective buyers. Next is code. And so we have the 4 action items there. And then lastly is the capital with 2 very important action steps, which is really the financing, figuring out the financing structure and starting to adopt those strategies. And then I'll leave us here at the concept and go over the concept in a little bit more detail, and then definitely be available for questions and overall discussion. But this is definitely one of those add-on features that we threw in with the project, because just looking at the bubble diagram and the land use framework, it's kind of hard to visualize what this should look like. What are we saying when we mean these things? And so we put this together, really breaking down the different spaces. So on the left side, again, you have that destination retail and highway services. The dashed line, black line there, is kind of the typical footprint layout for Shields, Bass Pro Shop, or others. So you can see if that type of use went in, it would occupy a good portion of that property on that kind of western, northwest corner. We have the innovation employment at the very top, really concentrated around kind of that central plaza space. The same with the event center village and the hotels there on the northeast corner of Events Drive and Poplar. And then the various recreational uses, which again, let's say a field's not required, or the private side doesn't need it, or a club doesn't need it, then you expand the innovation center, you adopt another use that's complementary in that space. So it is very flexible with that. With that, you can answer any questions.
I have a question. The vision, this is 111 acres. What's the vision? Is it to sell off 1 acre parcels? Is it to sell 50 acres and let them people develop it? Where's the vision as far as that?
Yeah, so in terms of the property itself, that kind of comes down to those next steps. And action steps for the city to understand what is it we want to control, or what is it we're looking to sell, and how we want to carve up this property. I don't know, Mr. City Manager, if you have anything additional and kind of how you've done that with other city-owned property in the past.
Mr. Mayor, I would say that is part of the analysis we need to engage when it comes to disposing of the property. Some of it we're going to want to hold on to, probably as it relates to the opportunities that may present themselves in terms of the innovation, employment side of things. There's an immediate conversation as it relates probably to hospitality. Some of that analysis, I think we're going to have to dive into a little more deeper than what this office is right now.
Because I think for this council to really wrap their head around this, we're going to have to really figure out what are we looking at as far as what we want to sell, how do we want to sell it, because none of this matters until that's kind of figured out, I believe. Go ahead.
I guess into that kind of thought, I did have a lot of questions regarding hotel space. And so have we done the study? Do we know we've got approximately 2,500 rooms now, but with the sports brands in place, how many rooms would we be needing to be able to accommodate that? And so I guess it just seemed like that was a small footprint set aside for hotels, because I guess in my mind, we're needing considerably more. And then, it gets it more for Carter. Are we holding this? I thought that the south side of this land on the west side of the event center was supposed to be included into this study.
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, we did talk about, the south piece, if you will, particularly along the line, along the side of Events Drive there on that, south side there. And they do have some direction for us to consider. But what you see here is the primary project area that the scope was included herein. But if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, if I could defer to the speaker to give us a little more direction in that regard, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Counselor, for your question, and Mr. City Manager. So, yeah, that was one thing that we realized when we had the defined scope area, and there was always that southeast parcel that from Popular Events, that southeast corner, that was kind of the reserved, it's here, but we're not focused on it. Well, as we came out to the site, got familiar with the area, and also through the discussions, like that southeast corner is really key. It's a really important location. It's very visible. And with the infrastructure extension and everything like that, it's a pretty important site to help offset some costs as well as tie into the existing Fort Wyoming Center, and then also down to the Interpretive Trail Center. Excuse me. Now, that doesn't mean that that whole corner necessarily has to be developed out. I think, based on what we've seen and what we've looked at in terms of spacing of different hotel space, there's a lot of opportunity to share parking with the Fort Wyoming Center. I know there's some dirt lot there that can be offset with shared parking opportunities, but the idea is to really build something that's more of a destination hospitality. Because if you're going to go to an event or go to the space, where are you going to stay? And so it creates that opportunity to stay right there, walk over to the event center, walk down to the trail center, and really be the kind of that catalyst to really help moving forward. And so we see that as kind of a very unique development opportunity, but also kind of limiting the space so that way it can take advantage of some of the open space areas around there.
Well, I'm very familiar with this concept. Prescott Valley, Arizona did this, where they're all kind of intertwined, and you can go in and you can literally spend all day there. You can go to a movie and a restaurant and have a hotel right there, and they have an events complex there as well. And it's really unique the way you've done this, very similar to what I've seen there. And with the sports ranch not having a lot of spectator area, I could see a lot of people just kind of getting in there and getting lost all day and doing their thing. That's what brought up the question, okay, how are we as a city going to divvy up this? How are we going to do the land? Are we selling a 50-acre parcel and expecting somebody else to develop it like that? Are we going to sell 1-acre pieces? Or you know what I mean? This has to have I think an even broader vision as to how do we start offering the lots? What does that look like in order to facilitate this? Because the city's certainly not going to develop all this and then say, yeah, here's a lot. What do you give me for it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm looking for, I think, that even broader view of how do we get there? Because we're quite a ways from there yet, I think, until we've decided property sizes, values, things like that. Because I think once this becomes available, you'll have a rush at the door, I think, initially for a piece of this. But it's just going to depend on what that looks like, I think, in the overall view. Anybody else have questions or comments? Sir?
Just a comment, and I'm sure a lot of this is from my own naivete, but to me, and I don't know if some of our constituents will have this reaction or not, but to me, this has some echoes of the Amoco reuse area. And I know it's a completely different circumstance, and I'd appreciate anyone who could give me a little background information there, but so it's, and I guess my reservation is kind of like, as the mayor mentioned, just to build out the infrastructure and wanting to know kind of, where's this going to go and how much are we going to end up with a bunch of empty land that, that somebody hasn't developed yet and that type of thing. So those are kind of my thoughts. It's just kind of, to me, it feels like the Amoco thing. And again, I know it's a completely different circumstance, but it just feels like it was a failure to launch kind of thing. It just didn't take off. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but anyway.
Well, I think the difference for me, and that's a great analogy, it truly is, but I think the difference is we don't really have any larger parcels or acreages for a company or a corporation to move in that brings jobs. We don't really have those 40 to 50 acre spots. The other thing is we've got the draw right there of the event center and the sports ranch.
Sure.
So I could certainly see, like Councilor Engelbretson said, I could certainly see a need for a lot more hotel rooms, and there would be literally no better place to put them than right next to those two facilities with restaurant and bar and indoor water park or whatever it is you envision. And I don't see this hurting our other infrastructure, our hotels anyway, because we don't have enough rooms now with the events that we have. And you add that 140,000 square foot building, that's going to be bringing people in regionally, nationally. There's just not enough. We don't have enough amenities for that many people. So I do see this being different because we do have two stable draws in that particular area. Where the Amoco reuse, there are so many stipulations on that land. You can't build a home there. It can't be inhabited 24 hours a day. There's only, you know, you can only be in a building for, I think it's up to 8 or 10, 12 hours a day on that property because of what's underneath. And so there's a lot of stipulations when it comes to that land that this land won't have. So there are some differences, but I understand your fear too. I would sure hate to see us invest a ton of money into this beautiful project and, you know, but I can tell you with those two amenities we have up there, I do believe if we build it, they will come eventually. I'm assuming that's your thought on it. You've been here and done this.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So great point and great question. It is one of those that really this helps to paint the picture. So during our stakeholder and public engagement meetings, there were some of the local hotel hospitality owners, and they love the idea of seeing additional hotel space and pad sites available. What you'll notice on the concept that there appears to be a lot of parking, and that's intentional because as the Fort Wyoming Center develops additional parcels and takes some of their parking away, the idea was to create some parking opportunities where then people would walk around. They'd park in the middle of the event center village, walk between the uses, or be at the hotel and then walk across. It's not to say that some of those sites couldn't then be flipped or changed over to a hotel, like an infill and pop a hotel up in one of those parking spaces. And so there are opportunities within the view of this concept to do adjustments and little tweaks based on what the market is dictating and what the market's guiding, but really to have that framework and that structure in place of, okay, once someone says, hey, I'm interested in building here, how quick can you get the sewer up? How quickly can we get and what is the plan in place for offsetting the different roadway improvements or the trail improvement? And so having some of those kind of next steps outlined so you understand what you're willing to partner on and how you're going to partner on are really critical. That's kind of the next pieces to this.
Counselor?
I'm gonna ask you a question, but I'm not gonna hold you to this answer. In your estimation, is the ski club going to be an issue on drawing businesses?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, I don't know that I can answer that. I think it could create an opportunity for synergy between complementary uses. I think it could help with some of this activity in the area. You know, given the volume, I saw kind of what their hours were and how often they operate. It's not regular, it's not all day, all night. They usually probably have limited evening hours. So, you know, you don't run into issues of hearing gunshots at 1, 2 in the morning or whatever it is. So I can't imagine it would, but that's not something I know. I know the inner workings of the ski club, so I don't.
I suppose just with tourism, and that's the whole point of this, is to attract tourists. And I don't believe a lot of them want to hear gunfire. And while they're got the family out with the kids, and then I think about veterans and things of that nature. So I do think about, like, because that is ultimately our thought process, is to attract families and things, and I'm sure that piece of it.
Yeah, that's a really big question and a helpful. Thanks.
Okay.
Vice Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I further have a question. I just want to acknowledge a couple of things. One, this is an incredible amount of work that takes place, the conversations that take place, the research, the conversations that take place for that. And you know, we kind of take a look at it, and I've said this for a lot of years, you know, we kind of take a look at these things and then we start giving our little 2 cents as city council. we really don't have our background or understanding the depth of it. I know that that's one of those things, but the point that I make is that, you know, a lot of the professional level that goes into this is incredibly a lot of work, the time intensive to that. And so I guess my point that I'm making is that I'm appreciative of this work and looking forward to the public comment. I think this is going to be something that is going to, you know, grow and evolve. Is it going to look like this? Probably not, but I think it's going to be something that's going to impact our community for the better. I think it's going to be something that's going to, down the road in 20, 30 years, we'll look at that as a really huge linchpin for that area once we do that. So thank you for the hard work that you did. Thank you, Beth, and for putting all that together. So appreciate it.
Counselor Jensen?
I'm just gonna stick up for the ski club with my 2 cents. It is, like Lisa said, I could understand that side of it, but it is an establishment that there is gonna be some synergy that's, I think, is gonna have to be there for them because they are an existing business. It is a family, it can be a family fun event. And so it's just the beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I think there. And I don't think it's gonna be a deterrent. Your opening statement said that this is Wyoming and we're doing outdoor, and you just went and said how much outdoor amenities is what you're shooting for, no pun intended. But the ski club to me fits right into that idea of what you're trying to shoot for. And with outdoor space and the rec and the extra trails and the natural spaces. So I don't want to take Wyoming out of Wyoming. And I think you cause an uproar if you try to do that. So I appreciate.
Counselor Pollock?
Thank you. Thanks for it's exciting to see kind of the finished draft here. I was part of the early meetings and then did not attend any of the workshops. So this is, you know, there's some similarities and some differences from where we initially started, which is, I think, part of the point of the process. And we'll see public reaction. I'll be looking forward to further input. Glad to see that we had a great turnout for the initial workshops, because it's really critical that we've got a lot of different perspectives weighing in on this sort of project. I think one thing for the council to consider as we, you know, if we adopt, you know, the finished sort of plan and event, you know, want to keep taking steps towards this project, is that I think we should prioritize market responsiveness. We can't totally predict what developer interest will be, but I think I think it is helpful to at least lay out an initial vision to attract the type of developer you want, rather than just, you know, a blank slate and, you know, come one, come all, and we try to piece it together. And so, you know, we don't know if it's going to be 1 acre or 50 acres or what people are going to need, what developers are going to see potential for. But I think as long as we've got a general vision and then we set ourselves up to be responsive to what the market interests are, I think we can partner with developers in a way that achieves a vision similar to this. You know, whether or not it realizes exactly this way, I'm sure it won't. But you know, gets us headed in this direction, and is not overly restrictive and prescriptive, so that we can also see the creativities that the developers bring to the table as well. So I'm looking forward to moving down that track and to getting some public comments on this, because certainly a lot of things that popped up on here are things that I wouldn't have thought of, like RV and camping sites. And I think that's great synergy with hotels. Not everybody wants to stay in a hotel. Some people, you know, are coming here for youth sports and then they want to make a road trip vacation out of it, and having something right nearby could be really interesting for families. So, you know, I think a lot of great ideas come when we get public participation. So I'm hoping folks will weigh in here.
Sir, I want to thank you for your time, your presentation. Very well done. What direction would you be looking for from us?
Mr. Mayor, I think, just to kind of set the table for a couple things here. You'll notice that there is some recreational opportunity area. Can we go back to sort of the bubble diagram, if you will, of the subject area. Perfect, thank you. One of the things that you have already set in motion, in partnership with other, entities around the county, is the recreational master planning that Zelim and her team are overseeing. It's these kinds of concepts and that kind of collaboration that I think is just a hand in glove, natural step to take next. And so you've already kind of gotten that rolling. It's already underway. And I'm looking forward to that being a partner piece to this conversation. The other thing that I think we need to be mindful of is we would like to take an approach to the business council to suggest to them, in partnership with our developers of the ranch complex, captured somewhat in this diagram as well, so that we can look at ways in which we can fund the infrastructure needs that invariably this area is going to require to be met somehow. As you heard, sewer is a big aspect of that is right now unanswered. And so I would hope you would feel comfortable with us investigating that and bringing you a resolution that would allow us to move forward after funds that hopefully would help us answer that question. Thirdly, I would say is we've got a very interesting conversation going on right now with the BLM. And I don't mean to compromise Councilor Jensen in that discussion right now, but I would suggest that as it relates to that southern opportunity area, there kind of under the big red dashed circle, we really need to work hand in glove with that team so that we can coordinate our vision and their vision with regard to what they see happening in that area, in hand in glove as well. Because we certainly don't want to be at cross purposes with them, and we don't want them to be at cross purposes with what you might have in mind. So I would suggest we need to flesh those conversations out more as well. And in the background, from a staff level, that's happening. We plan to be coming to talk to you further about those things also. I think Councilor Pollack's comments about looking at this too prescriptively is absolutely the right direction, if you will, because when you look at the other diagram that we just kind of shifted from, I would say, yeah, this right here, don't get too hung up on what this might lay out for you, but rather I would say let's take the vision that was established more in the bubble diagram standpoint, if you will, so that we know, generally speaking, what our community has told us they'd like to see, what our stakeholders have told us they'd like to see, in sort of a broad visionary standpoint, going back to the bubble diagram, if you don't mind. Thank you for letting me impose upon you like that. This is a really good vision, and we do have opportunity area that we can build into this that would be more flexible space. And I think our consultant indicated they'd be willing to kind of propose what that area might look like as it relates to this overall perspective. I do want to bring some more homework back to you in the form of what our market locally might say as to sort of the next steps, because I'm real anxious to want to get a lot of this property out in the hands of the private sector, so we can start that development piece so that it's ready to roll in conjunction with the ribbon cutting of the ranch. And when those folks start rolling into town, we've got complementary services in place to fit their needs, whatever those needs might be at this point. So just to give you sort of the lay of the land that I see and make sure I'm not getting ahead of you, that's what I'd recommend as far as our next steps moving forward from here.
Would be what? Okay, that was a lot of rambling. I'm trying to get to where.
More items. the master plan for the parks, right? The potential application to the business council for infrastructure needs. The discussion with the BLM, Counselor Jensen notwithstanding, I don't mean to put you on the spot. And then, of course, sort of the direction of the market, if you will. Do a little homework in that regard as to what we put on the private sector and put out on the market. Absolutely next. So 4 larger steps is what I'm talking about.
Everybody on board with that? Okay. I guess you got homework.
We do. Exciting.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, sir.
This reminds me of around where the NASCAR track is in Kansas City. They've got the NASCAR track, they've got a Cabela's, they've got a Wolf Lodge, they've got other hotels, restaurants all around there. So you can go to stay at the Wolf Lodge for the kids and everything. They've got the big RV parking. I mean,
Yep.
that
could be,
group of
could be
everything.
very interesting for sure. Let's see, we are a little bit behind, but we're doing okay. Let's get to the Rec Enterprise Business Plan, Part 2, Fort Casper and Pony Express. I'm assuming we're gonna hear from Zulema pretty quick.
Mr. Mayor, you would be assuming absolutely correct. Ms. Lopez has been working really hard with her teams, I should say. Tonight, we're going to hear about Fort Casper and the possibilities that exist to improve our recapture efforts there at the fort. One of the things that's kind of a companion topic, if you will, is with regard to a resurgence of interest locally in the Pony Express exhibit that previous councils have talked about before, and the possibilities that exist there. So we have recommendations that are really twofold tonight. Number one, as it relates to implementing aspects of a business plan that would improve recapture needs at the fort. And then number two, some ideas as it relates to investigating the Pony Express exhibit and its potential out at the fort as well. So it's kind of a bifurcated conversation all under the umbrella of the fort.
Ms. Lopez, welcome.
Evening. So fun, exciting things to talk about tonight. Okay, well, I hope to add to it. It has been since September of last year that I talked to you about the Fort Casper Museum specifically and our plans with that enterprise as it relates to the subsidy for that operation. And so just to remind you on screen, this was the last slide of the presentation that I shared that sort of indicated to you what strategies we hoped to research further and potentially implement in order to improve the subsidy position at that facility. And so we were, of course, looking to reduce some operational costs. We have since learned that unfortunately, because of how the fort is categorized and how we process credit card payments there right now, we are not able to easily transfer those credit card fees to our customers like we were able to with utility billing and some of our other and within some of our other operations. And so we are currently exploring other opportunities or options there, but just so that you know, unfortunately, the credit card companies categorize how those fees are established, and museums are exempt from that ability. So we did also include in our efforts to reduce operational costs, really maximizing volunteer staffing, and of course seeking grants to fund programming and other items at the museum. We wanted to really focus on continuing to create exciting traveling and temporary exhibits, continue to increase and improve our marketing efforts, increase park and multi-purpose room rentals at the facility, bolster gift shop sales, and really our gift shop is one of the primary sources of revenue for the operation. And so really building on that is important to us in the future. Identify, host more attractions and events on site, which we really hope will be bolstered by our purchase of the Isaac Walton property and some opportunities that I think inherently exist there with that adjacent property. We want to continue to focus on growing, developing, and enhancing our collaborative partnerships with the Fort Caspar Museum Association, which we have a great relationship with. They are a very active association. They do a lot of work with the museum staff in really driving education and visitorship to the museum. Continuing our partnership with Visit Casper to help us market in the state, in the city, in the state, and at the national level for our facilities. And then lastly, we wanted to look at talking about expanding the museum and our exhibits. So that is a recap. So then I also want to share with you kind of where we rounded out in terms of fiscal year 23. You may remember in that September conversation, I did present you with what our fiscal year 23 budget looked like, and then created sort of an optimized rate model that would show you kind of what we would need to do and what areas we would need to improve in order to meet our 20% cost recovery goal for the facility. So I'm happy to report that we did better than how we budgeted for FY23. Unfortunately, we still fell short of our 20% cost recovery goal. So as we ended out fiscal year 23, we were at 16.7% cost recovery. We were budgeted, I believe, at right around 15.9%, or just under 16%. So we made some strides, we made some improvements, so we think we're effective, and we will continue to build on those. But we did fall short of the goal for fiscal year 23. Now moving into fiscal year 24, which is on the right, I'm just showing you how we are budgeted currently. So currently we are budgeted to obtain 17.8% cost recovery. So again, still shy of our 20% goal. And that includes $84,000 worth of revenue that is recovered through fees and other revenue opportunities at the museum, and about $470,000 in our operational costs. So the bottom right sort of demonstrates what we need to do as a change from 23 in order to obtain our budget goals for the year. And so you will see that the right-hand column that shows attendance increases is really what we're going to try to target through solid marketing and improvements to our website. We think we can achieve that. And then one change that has been implemented after we discussed it last fall was that previously children 12 and under were obtaining free admission into the museum. We did change that structure slightly. Now it's children 5 and under are admitted for free, and we did add a youth rate for kids between that 6 and 12-year-old time. So this is as we sit currently at the start of fiscal year 24. Now, what I was tasked with was creating kind of our 5-year strategic plan, implementing or proposing after our research and analysis, what strategies we feel we are able to successfully achieve, and what impacts we believe those strategies will have into the future. And so what I really learned from this exercise, probably more than anything, is that with such a lean budget, and the fact that our operational costs are really hard fixed costs that we have very little control over. It's staff, it's the carrying costs for the buildings in terms of utilities and things like that. We don't have a lot of flexibility in our operations budget. There's not a lot of fluff there to buy fancy extras. Really, the Museum Association contributes funds to help us with a lot of those things. And so the short story, I guess, to share with you is that we can do better. For sure, we can do better in terms of how we market, improvements to our website, which I would like to include, e-commerce opportunities for people to purchase tickets and to purchase merchandise from the gift shop online. I think those efforts will yield, positive results for us, albeit small. The fact of the matter is we can increase our revenue at the facility by raising rates and improving gift shop sales. by some 10 to 20%. And it's really not going to make much of an impact because the dollars that we're talking about just aren't very much to begin with. And so that is sort of the segue into the discussion that I would like to have tonight about the potential for our acceptance of the Pony Express collection. So just to give you a very brief history, the Pony Express collection was first offered to the city in 2018. I understand my predecessor, Tim Cortez, Fort Caspar Museum staff and others were involved in doing some analysis at that time and ultimately determined to pass on accepting the collection. And so fast forward a couple of years and in December of last year, after some conversations regarding the potential installation of, Wynn's Henge or Chris Navarro's art in the proximity of Fort Caspar grounds, I was made aware for the first time of this opportunity for the Pony Express collection and turned to Rick Young is our museum supervisor. He is here to help me answer some questions today, as well as a few members of the Fort Caspar Museum Association. But so after, in December of 22, I asked Rick to call and inquire what the status of the collection was. And at that time, he found out that after Caspar passed, it was offered to another museum in Utah, and they were actively trying to fundraise to build either an expansion onto a museum or a new museum to house the collection. In February of 2023, Rick was notified that that effort was not successful. And once again, Mrs. Nardoni, who is the widow of Joe Nardoni, who spent much of his life devoted to research and collecting all things related to the Pony Express, reached out and said that Caspar was still the primary location he would like to house his collection and that the collection was up for grabs again. And so we've spent time over the last several months really combing over the best data that we could gather in terms of what other Pony Express museums across the United States are seeing with visitorship, about what it would really entail for us to bring this collection in-house and what we would need in terms of building expansion and space, staffing, all of those things. And the honest truth is that while I feel like this is a very attractive opportunity for us that we should consider, I don't have a lot of confidence to say myself that I think that this is a good investment for the city of Caspar. And so what I'm really asking for tonight is permission to complete a feasibility study and have some professionals analyze the collection, find out if the collection is a good fit for our community, try to extrapolate all of the national data and visitor information and help us to determine what kinds of increase in visitorship we could actually see from a collection like this, help us to determine the space that we would need and calculate construction costs if that was to be the case. Essentially what I'm asking for is similar to what we did with the Ice Arena and our partners there with the Caspar Amateur Hockey Club and really take a deep analysis, then take that data, update this, this projection with real numbers that we feel a little bit more confident in, and then show you after the feasibility study if this is a good move for us, so that we can move forward if in fact it is, obtain the collection and start working towards exhibiting that collection.
How much would a study like that cost and where does that money come from?
Mayor, councilors, so right now we are estimating that the study is going to cost somewhere in the vicinity of $10,000 to $15,000. If council would approve that direction, we will start seeking out grants and having discussions with our partners, including the Fort Caspar Museum Association, to see if they would be willing to contribute funds to have the study done, so that we can determine if this is the right move for us.
Thank you, Lisa.
I guess, because you're talking about building out and everything, I'm not sure exactly when you're talking about the Pony Express collection of how much stuff it is, but you have rooms at the Fort Caspar that you're talking about renting out and things. So to me, you have some space there you could utilize for a collection. Possibly. I'm not sure if that's enough room, and I don't know, I guess in my mind, I mean, a collection could be absolutely anything. Do you have an idea of like what's in the collection?
It's huge. It's huge. They don't have enough room for it. It's huge. They'll tell you. Go ahead.
Mayor, Counselor, thank you. So, to give you an idea, I understand that there is an entire garage in California full of the collection, and it spills over into the living residency of Mrs. Nardoni. Is that correct?
In the attic.
In the attic. So it is quite an extensive collection. It includes art, it includes memorabilia, it includes a lot of coins, you know, gold minted coins specifically, commemorating the Pony Express. There are large pieces, there are small pieces, but there are many, many pieces. And in addition to that, you know, Mr. Nardoni committed decades of his life to research. And so there are cabinets and cabinets and cabinets of his intellectual property, some of which have actually been given to the Utah State Parks. But we believe that we could get them back or at least loan them so that we could also have access to that intellectual property. So it is quite extensive in size. And that being said, Rick has shared with me that he does believe we could temporarily store the collectibles and we could display some of them in the space that currently exists in the museum. But in terms of a long-term solution, we would definitely need to expand the museum in order to store parts of the collection that are not on display at all times, and then give enough room in the museum to provide a big enough exhibit or display that it's worthwhile for people to actually come and see.
Follow-up question, how much is she wanting for this collection?
Mayor, Counselor, great question. So, sorry, I didn't clarify that. So the collection would be given to the city for free. We are not paying for any part of the collection. The investment that the city would need to make is really the capital investment to build an expansion. However, the Museum Association as a 501c3 would help us in raising the funds, much like the Amateur Hockey Club is with the Ice Arena expansion. And so they have committed to partner with us to raise any funds necessary to expand the museum should we accept the collection. But then the city would have the additional carrying costs that we're struggling to kind of quantify accurately right now in terms of heating and cooling the building, more water, more restrooms. You know, we just don't really know what that looks like very clearly. And I think the feasibility study will help us with that.
Vice Mayor.
So my suggestion is for this, I just kind of looking at all the numbers, looking at all the stuff, it's pretty expansive. I think we should do a feasibility study. And I think it's going to be the surest way for us to come up to say, we're going to look at the numbers, we're going to see all those things, and they're going to be like, it's not feasible for us to be able to do that. Or this isn't going to be a good benefit or whatnot. And so I think in order for us to make a good decision on this, I think a feasibility study is going to be critical for something like this. And granted, it'll cost $10,000 to $15,000, but I think it's going to be imperative that we do that. And so I'm supportive of a feasibility study.
I would agree with you as far as the feasibility study goes, but here I go jumping in the mud puddle because the Casper Museum, the Fort Casper Museum, is probably my biggest headache being on this council. We never hit our subsidy goals. They are the worst subsidy percentage-wise that we have. We have brought things to them to give them opportunities to get people in their door, to increase their bottom line, to increase their gift shop, and it turned into a big turf war. And so I'm not happy with the Fort Casper Museum. I'm not happy with the way it's being done. I don't like the idea when somebody offers you people walking through your door and revenue in there to help us with our subsidies, and everybody threw a fit. So for me, if I was running this like a business, and that's my biggest sinkhole, I'm not putting another dime in it. So this council may want the study and they may choose to do it, but they'll do it with my no vote, certainly, until that board or whoever's running that place decides to get on board and help the city help itself when it comes to that museum. I'm not interested in helping them. That's me personally. Man.
thank you. Just was doing a little bit of looking to try to get some context. Fort Caspar Museum is listed as only one of 9 places to visit along the Pony Express Trail by nationalponyexpress.org. So when you're thinking about the relevance of that location to the broader trail and the expanse that it crosses, I think it's very relevant to the location itself. And I think that, presumably, that's why it's been identified as a good fit for the home for this collection, and why it is, the opportunity is coming back around. And so, I would say as the owners of this museum facility, and I think we have a duty to the history that occurred there to try to make it accessible to folks, to try to preserve it, to try to collect it. I think that it's worth the feasibility study just for that alone, because it is an important location along that trail, and there are only a handful of them that are, identified as such. And so to me, that's due diligence that we should feel a sense of duty to do, because that history exists, right? It was collected by a person, and the fact that it's being offered to us, I think we need to at least check to see if it's something that we are capable of carrying on and presenting to the public. So I'm supportive of the feasibility study. So I think I would feel more comfortable accepting it if we had that information at our disposal. Because obviously, if you accept something like that, that's a big responsibility to take on. And so whether or not we can do that, I don't know, but I think we should find out.
Very good, Counselor.
So to piggyback a little bit off of Council or Pollock's information, can we look at it maybe as a 2-pronged approach? Because I guess my concern is that it's being offered to other places, and so this would be a rare opportunity. So could we enter into some type of an agreement, maybe a 5-year agreement or a 10-year something of where we got the materials, and then the museum would use some space to display what they could while we're trying to do the feasibility study, while we're trying to figure out space. And if we couldn't get everything together, then we would then give it all back, kind of a scenario. And then that way we would have it and be able to utilize it somewhat to help the museum maybe build up some people to see it, but then it would not be then given to somebody else while we're doing all of this.
Mayor, Counselor, you brought up several good points. We're going to try to address them. So the first one is, as we understand it right now, Mrs. Nardoni is not offering the collection to anyone else. Her husband picked Fort Caspar as his first choice for the collection to be displayed. And so when we turned it down, she went to his second choice, and they have also turned it down. So to the best of our knowledge, she is not shopping other museums to send the collection to. While I feel like she's eager to get rid of it because it's clearly taking up space in her home, she also wants to honor the wishes of her husband and put it where he wanted it to be. That was his life's work, his passion. She wants to honor that legacy. The second part of that is that when we talked to her about doing the feasibility study, and Rick expressed to her that we are genuinely interested, and that is, if council approved, we would move forward with the feasibility study. If the feasibility study came back favorable for the city of Casper, that we would accept the collection. And to that point, she said, that sounds wonderful. I would like a letter of intent or something that outlines to me that that is your intention should the feasibility study be favorable. And so if it pleases the council, we will draft a letter of intent to that effect. And really, with the council's direction, we could make that look any way you wanted. If that means accepting part of the collection and displaying it as a teaser to see if it increases visitorship and people are interested, we could certainly look at that. I do know that she does not want to split up the collection. But she may be willing to give up parts of it, so that we could display parts of it in our exhibit space now. I think that could look a lot of different ways, and I would just need direction on how you want to move forward. As it stands right now, our proposal is to provide her a letter of intent that says we will do the feasibility study as quickly as we can achieve the funding for it. And then if the results were favorable, we would execute a donation agreement that would lay out all the terms of the donation and all the subsequent things that need to happen.
Counselor Pollock?
Thank you, Mayor. In terms of the scope of the feasibility study, would it be helping us to answer the question, what type of investment would we need to make and what type of return would we hope to see on that investment over time? Would that be sort of the question that the feasibility study answers for us?
Mayor, Counselor, great question. So I did jot down some notes on what I would like to see out of a feasibility study, and then certainly please add to that and we will make sure it's included in the scope if that's the direction you decide to go. So really I'm looking to see what is the viability of the collection addition and what factors are needed to lead to the success of having that collection at Fort Caspar Museum. So I'm really interested in the value of the collection. Mrs. Nardoni estimates that it's worth about $1.5 million. We're not really sure how she got that estimate. We don't know if that was an insurance appraisal. We don't know. I mean, there's a ton of art. There's a lot of rare coins. That could be very possible, but we just don't know. And so helping us to value the collection would be important to me. Identifying what the visitor impact could be. These companies are well suited to see visitorship at other like museums. And really it's very exciting because Fort Caspar has some very unique offerings that other Pony Express locations don't have. Not only were we a bona fide Pony Express site, we're also a telegraph station. We're also where other historic trails converge. We're the Black Crossing. I mean, there's a lot of very exciting things that happened at this location. 20 years of trail history right at our location, where other museums may have the Pony Express, but they don't have that other history as well. And so anyways, just trying to really dive into the visitorship and the economic impact that could help create in the community. And then again, those aspects to ensure success. So what would we be looking at in terms of an expansion? How much space would we need given the size of the collection? What those construction costs might look like, what those carrying costs would look like in terms of future costs for utilities, what the optimum staffing might need to be. I mean, right now we have 3 full-time staff at the museum and a lot of volunteer assistants. Would that be adequate? Should we look at adding staff if that's needed? So we really need some help and if nothing else, sort of verifying some of the assumptions that we're making about the collection and the impact. And then I would actually like to venture into some additional recommendations that are, what operational changes do we need? How much should we be investing in marketing? How much should we be investing in other programming? What should the fee structure look like? If we add a collection like this, is it justifiable to increase the fees? Should the fees stay pretty stagnant? Help with that would be beneficial. Added amenities that we might need right now. It's very common in museums anymore to be able to get a cup of coffee and a snack. We don't have an area to do that in our museum. So should we look at other amenities like that? Of course, programming. How do we maximize our partnerships in the community and across the nation when it comes to an international phenom that is the Pony Express? And then also funding mechanisms, like where could we really look towards when you're talking about potential national designation as a Pony Express museum? That may open up funding opportunities in terms of national grants, national historic grants, federal grants that we may not have access to now. And so I would ask for all of those components to be evaluated as part of the study.
I would also ask for a proposed rate of return. Without question. In other words, what's the investment of the building that it's going to take to house this? It's going to have to include restrooms and everything else. How many years are we looking at a rate of return based on, it's pretty important. Did you have a follow-up? Okay, sorry. Jenna, go ahead.
I just want to say, I think a feasibility study is good, just from a museum standpoint, being at the trail center. The Pony Express is one of the trails that we recognize up there as a National Historic Trail. And we have a small exhibit for it, which this would enhance the people that come to, I see this in a couple different ways. So I feel like this would enhance the visitors' experience that they're having at our museum. Whereas we could benefit and push ours, like, oh, you like this, the historical trail, go over to Fort Caspar, go check out their more detailed exhibit, being the Pony Express. They would get a lot more history from that, being over from an exhibit being at Fort Caspar. So I feel that we would be able to push some of our clients back, or our customers, visitors, over to Fort Caspar, where their visitation would probably pick up substantially, is what I'm assuming. I mean, roughly, I don't have the exact numbers for last year of our visitation, but we always fall somewhere between 20 and 40,000 visitors a year. So that being, if they, even a percentage of them went over and checked out their other exhibit at the Pony Express, I just see that would help with that, getting their rates, their numbers up. The other thing, same thing with marketing, because we also, I mean, it was something that they could probably piggyback off of a lot of different ways into how to market the Pony Express. We also have the National Pony Express Association that members here in Casper, and they do a lot already. We share museums, entertainers and reenactors, and that would help too. So I would like to see it, just because it sounds amazing. And I think there's a large enough audience out there that historians that go and see and search out those kinds of.
Well, I think that's what a feasibility study will show, won't it?
Yeah.
So I'm all in favor of it as well. Because if we can get more people in the door and start getting the subsidy worked out, I'm on board with that. But I fear, we've been here before and we've had guidance from curators at other museums that said, this is not a good deal for you. That's why we haven't had it to this point. So I'd be very interested to see what a feasibility study brings. I'm also curious how we're going to fund that. It's $15,000. So, I'm sure you have a plan, I'm guessing, for where that money comes from to pay for the study.
Mayor,
Ma'am.
yes, I have a plan. I can't guarantee it will be executed exactly as we want it to be, but I do have a plan.
Okay.
And I will bring up a funding proposal to you as soon as I have that.
Okay, very good. Counselor?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out there is a National Pony Express Museum already in St. Joseph, Missouri. So I guess one of the questions I would like answered in the feasibility study is maybe, I realize Missouri's a ways away, is kind of how is this different than, or maybe not necessarily better than, but how is it different than the National Museum that's been in existence for a long time? And, is there a different experience we can offer, or different artifacts and so forth that we can certainly offer that are unique, would be unique to this museum?
Mayor, Counselor, so I think the feasibility study will help us to answer that more kind of definitively. But just in the research that we've done, St. Joseph, Missouri is actually the start of the Pony Express route. And so it makes sense that they would have a museum dedicated to that. We are actually the northernmost and approximately the center point of the route, which gives us significant relevance as well. And as I mentioned before, we also have 20 years of other history that kind of converge in this one spot that I think will help to attract even more attention. As I understand it, the museum in Missouri has a stable where they really focus on the horses and how the horses were trained and treated and all of that kind of stuff. And they have, life-size models of horses and the workers in the stables and those kinds of things. And then you go into the museum and there's a pretty small exhibit on life on the trail and things like that. Some few artifacts and collection items in terms of saddles and things like that. My understanding, and again, I think a solid third-party analysis will help us to confirm this, but my understanding is that Mr. Nardoni's collection is one of a kind, and it is the largest of its kind in the US and probably the world. And so really trying to quantify that and seeing what value add items we can offer to the viewing public is going to be really, really important. But what I'm hearing from experts, which a museum expert I am not, but what I'm hearing from our local experts is that there are artifacts worth sharing. And one in particular is not only related to Pony Express, but it's a telegraph relic that could be of particular interest.
Counselor?
That'd be amazing. Okay, just one short other piece that you can add to all this is that, did you know already that the Pony Express does a re-ride that comes through Casper and it actually does it? Well, Fort Casper is one of the stops on there too. So just another relevant thing that if they did stop there during their annual re-ride, it would be marketing on that too.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like we have the consensus that we would like you to move forward with the feasibility study. I'm assuming everybody's okay with that from what I've heard. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And I guess you'll come to us with a funding mechanism for that, and we'll await that glorious day when we see you again. Thank you very much.
In terms of the 5-year plan, you know, I'd just like to point out again, you know, we are going to really try, particularly investing efforts in our marketing, in our website improvements, and just developing some exciting events that will bring locals back especially. But I did want to point out, and this is a very rough projection, but in my estimation, adding this collection is really the only way that we could look to move the needle. Otherwise, I believe we will be floating around that 20% mark probably forever. I just don't, it's very difficult without expanding the offering there to see a way that we could really move the needle more than 5% without making a major change.
With that segue is why I made my comment earlier. I'm not trying to alienate myself with the Casper Museum folks at all. I understand the passion, I understand the history, but I also understand that we had a unique opportunity with some new history to bring tens of thousands of people into that place. So I think some people are going to need to open their minds up, because I don't know how long this city's going to continue hovering around the 20% mark just to have Casper Museum sitting there when nobody's going to it. I mean, we look at the numbers. I'm not saying nobody's going to it, but we don't have many people frequenting the place. And it is our worst subsidy getter. So at some point, you know, something's going to have to give. And it's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen with this council. But I can tell you that you get more people like me on this council and they don't start getting proactive, probably not going to be around forever. It's just a guess. That ought to bring some press tonight. Okay, you have your direction. I thank you very much. And we will move on to the Casper Rec League Association agreement. So I'm assuming you're going to stay right there.
Mr. Mayor, Zulema has been working with the CRLA with regard to repurposing of our relationship with that very helpful organization. This repurposing of this agreement will help us as it relates to our recapture efforts pertaining to sports and sports programming. The new fund of which you just created by virtue of the last budget session, by the way. So the repurposing of this agreement is very timely, very appropriate for us if indeed recapture of our expenses is important to us. And I would suggest it sounds like it might be, which I'm grateful for. So with that, if I could turn the time over to Zulema to walk us through the elements of this agreement, I would.
Ms. Lopez.
Recreation Leagues Association, or CRLA, by which really the association was created to help us to staff large tournaments that generally actually take a lot of out-of-towners to maximize official staffing. when you need an influx of 100 officials for a large tournament, such as the USA softball tournament that we recently had here, it could be hard to go through our human resources hiring practices and get those people on board in time for the tournament, and then they leave and we have to remove them from our payroll and all of that cumbersome effort that goes along with that. So really the CRLA was created to help us in that staffing effort, and has since just withstood that relationship over time. The challenge that we have is that when it was created, there were some reimbursement structures that were included in the agreement that did not account for the city staff time that was going into recreational league sports. And so we have a full-time supervisor that's responsible for rec league sports as well as athletic field maintenance. And then we have a coordinator who is 100% dedicated to helping to coordinate, schedule, staff league sport events. And so when we were receiving reimbursements from CRLA, those two personnel expenses were not being accounted for. They were paying us reimbursements for the use of the gym at the rec center or athletic fields, based on costs established quite a long time ago that are really quite low right now. And so we really feel like it was not a good representation of what the city's investment was in recreational league sports. In addition to that financial struggle, we also recognize that there were some gaps in terms of the structure that opened up some liability concerns in terms of staffing, because they would hire officials to umpire games or do whatever, but they were not training those officials. They were not, for instance, having officials go through sexual harassment training or non-discrimination training, those kinds of things. And so should one of their officials have acted inappropriately, that opened them up for liability, could have potentially opened the city up for liability. And so we recognized that hole and decided that a restructure was necessary to fill that gap and protect both parties. And so this restructure is proposed to do just that. It addresses the financial concerns that the city has. It addresses some of the liability concerns that we have with staffing, but is also structured as such that they will continue to be able to help us to staff those large tournaments where it would be difficult for us to do that ourselves. And so I really believe that it's a win-win situation for both parties. The city would now receive all revenue from tournaments, from rec league sport registrations for individual players and teams. And then we would pay for all of the carrying costs associated with those rec league sports. And then we would contract separately with CRLA to provide officials for tournaments only. And that would be a professional services agreement that would require insurance for them to cover their staff and any associated liability concerns. And we just feel like this is a good agreement all the way around to help the city and to help the association.
It was in our packet. I'm sure everybody read that. So is there any questions for Zulema concerning the CRLA? All good? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That was 5 minutes for 60 minutes. That was pretty good. You're getting better at this. I appreciate you. Thank you. All right, council goals follow-up, sir. Are we okay? Did anybody need a break? We're doing all right? Okay, rolling.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. This is indeed a follow-up conversation with regard to our previous discussion with you on this matter, council goals. Just a couple weeks ago, actually. Your suggestion, as I understand it, was that you wanted to see sort of a boiled down list of objectives and tasks pertaining to the broader goals that we had placed in front of you to consider. And we have taken that homework assignment and reached out to our department heads and other stakeholders internally to suggest, okay, what is it that, or to ask, what is it that we can legitimately, reasonably expect to be done in 2 years. You have a list in front of you that I believe is an appended list that I think is a reasonable, array of tasks that can be accomplished over the next 2 years. Pete, of course, has been really helpful to help us boil that down and to facilitate that conversation on a more granular matter. And he's here to walk us through that and take any questions or directives that you might have for this aspect of this exercise. And so if I could turn time over to Pete, I'd appreciate it.
Akito Pete, good evening.
Mayor, thank you. Always a pleasure to see everyone. Thank you very much for having me back. One of the questions that came up last time I was here was, how are we doing with the last set of council goals? So I figured I'd start there and then we can go through and talk about the new set and some of the more granularity that we've gotten. So council had some concern about what we got done and what we did not get done last time. Let's start with the bad news. So on in the third column, these are the council goals from the previous set, 2021 through 2022, broken into 13 broad categories, just to give a sense for what this needs to get accomplished in that set. And you'll see the numbers at the very bottom, 71, 21, 6. We had broken those into 98 specific steps and tasks that need to get done in order to accomplish the larger set. And so you can see we've got 71 that were completed, 21 that are still technically in progress, and 6 that are effectively in a non-started position. So I did want to start with a not started, just because that does stand out as a sore thumb. That's our stormwater goal. Getting stormwater under control in terms of upsizing the system, in terms of getting an ongoing funding mechanism for it, in terms of making sure that we've got stormwater in a permanent and sustainable status. There's a lot of stuff we need to do. And so that is one of the reasons why you see that in your new set goals. We have rolled that over, and we do want to talk about that some more later on tonight. Moving on from there, for the rest, I'll just start from the top and move down. Business development, we have a number of goals which are in progress but not quite done. We are expecting to see a few presentations coming up in the next couple of months here. One of them being about business opportunities in terms of what we can legally do to incentivize business. Certainly that's been a long and ongoing conversation between community development and the attorney's office, along with a few other things that are associated with business development, such as finalizing some cooperative agreements with some of the economic development groups that we partner with on a regular basis. Citizen engagement, both through methods and technology, we are rolling that one forward. Certainly we made progress in the last 2 years. We've hired an entire staff dedicated toward citizen engagement and trying to get that up and running and taking it to the next level. But we don't consider that to be done, which is one of the reasons why you're seeing it continue on. Citywide building and facility assessment, that one we do consider to be complete. We did the office assessment, alpha facilities, excuse me, and we finished that report. We do have a plan, we do have some funding in place. Obviously, we do want to continue building maintenance too. That's also the next set of goals again. Digital infrastructure, certainly our centerpiece project there was getting all of our buildings networked with redundant fiber. That is ongoing with a partner Mountain West on this one, but that's a major project that's under contract and is obviously roughly half done at this moment. The police facility, obviously that one is underway. We acquired the Casper Business Center. We have an architect under contract, but we're still going to carry that one forward. It's not completely done. Certainly, it's not been converted to a police facility yet, and therefore we have to keep going. Recreation plans, we've probably had something just short of 1 million presentations on all the recreation plans that are ongoing, including some earlier this evening. And so we do expect that as capstones for most of those, we should be able to polish those off as we publish the final documents, the final business plan. But we didn't feel like we could actually check them off just yet for that region. River restoration, We have made some progress on that. We've worked forward with some of the reaches, but we did promise to come up with a plan for the next reach, and that plan is not completely done, so we can't check it out just yet. Let's see, we already talked about stormwater street repair. Certainly we made progress on that, and so we will check this one out as we're done. Yes, there are still potholes out there. We're not done with street repair, but we did reassess how much we had to do. We did come up with a designated and prioritized list of streets that need to be repaired and in their condition. And we did enhance funding to streets in 1/7/17. 1/7/17 allocations are more focused on streets than they were previously. So again, it's never done, but it's certainly maybe a bit more under control than it was. Transit marketing and transit operations, certainly, as you will recall, when we started this process, the bus system was still being run by an outside entity. We have since taken it in-house. That required bringing an entire division of full staff and funding and all the other things go along with that. But getting that up and running, that's a major undertaking. I'm pleased to say that we are almost done with that. There's still one other thing we're trying to do. We're trying to get a team going business experts to help us with advisory function. We haven't yet gotten that team to off the ground yet, so one task still remaining there. Last but not least, wastewater treatment plant. That one is, again, another task that we're rolling over into the next step. This is keeping an eye on those long-term capital needs. We felt like some of our operations are just to stay in touch with DEP, to stay in touch with the EPA, needed the operation committee discussion. And so we consider those to be still in progress. It would be hard to mark that complete because, again, those are ongoing discussions. So that was my quick review of where we were with the previous set of goals. Might be the time for me to pause and catch my breath, especially if you have any questions about any of these, where we are at, why we are there, and or why we're carrying them forward.
I guess, Carter, I'd like to ask, we have stormwater on there, which is certainly a long range goal of ours. We also know it's going to require a $40 million investment, which isn't going to happen over the next 2 years. So is it really appropriate for us to be carrying it over into our current, goal, I guess? Which is what kind of prompted this whole thing anyway. Really.
Sure, yeah, you bet. Well, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a reasonable question. I would say there's certainly degrees of accomplishing that goal that I would suggest council may want to consider, at least in terms of the beginning stages of implementation. Without a doubt, fixing stormwater to the extent of that huge ask and need and so on, you'd be correct in assuming that that's probably a 10 to 20 year undertaking, if not more. But in terms of implementing the enterprise, those beginning steps can take place within the next 2 years if council sees fit.
Thank you for the clarity.
You bet.
Thank you, Mayor. So as we move on into the next set of goals, we did take very seriously the direction from 2 weeks ago about making sure that these were goals that were attainable in these 2 year plan, trying to define them a bit more precisely, and also to have a set of accomplishments that we can achieve without breaking the staff. I think that I speak for all the staff that we were very appreciative of some of the comments that were made this last time about concern for staff becoming overworked and the level of stress that having impossible tasks can cause. And so there were several very intensive discussions held at the staff level about different ways to reimagine and nail these things down into a system that would be 2 years in a much more defined way. That being said, as I go through these, if it feels like things are still too vague, certainly we can define it further. If it feels like things are still too ambitious, obviously we can scale them back in various different ways. And also let's keep in mind, maybe we scaled them back too far. And if so, of course, that would be council's direction, say, no, we need you to go a little bit further than that. But that's why we're here tonight. That's what we're talking to you about all these things. So I will go through them again, but try to be a bit more precise this time. But I will try to go fast because I know that we did hit them, every one of them, all 17 2 weeks ago, and I know you might not enjoy seeing them again. That being said, okay, dealing with homelessness. Certainly, yes, we can't solve homelessness in 2 years, but there are a few specific items that staff really did want to focus on. One of them being trying to get the homeless count up by moving the homelessness date. We're working with our congressman on that because it is set nationally, but certainly to get that homelessness count tied down by moving it, and then also trying to leverage that into a daily count. Whereas the previous goal was a bit more vague about having an ongoing census. This is more about get the homelessness count under control on an annual basis, and then try to leverage from there towards a more regular count. Another aspect about this is sharing information, and you can certainly start by focusing information on our major customers, almost individuals who we deal with on a regular basis. And then perhaps expand that on into information sharing about the larger homelessness population. Again, trying to start with a smaller task and then expand it if we can. We still want to continue with this community of care certification. That is still something that we think we can achieve within the 2 years. And that's still something that's going to be very helpful, assuming we get it granted from HUD as far as a greater partnership with the federal government. Police facility. We have a contractor under design. We have the architect under the contract for design. Thank you very much for waiting me as I reorganize that sentence. We're still expecting to have that design done, but one of the concerns that we have is the uncertainty in the construction cost. We know that costs have changed a lot in the last couple of years. Our initial estimates are probably wrong. We just don't know how they're wrong, where they're wrong, and what we can do. And until we go out to bid, we just not gonna know. So we do want to make sure that we have some flexibility in how we do that design. Make sure we have some way to do alternates to either change the scope to meet our budget or hopefully perhaps even change our budget to meet our scope. We do want to do some more exploration. Other funding sources include federal sources. Those dollars are hard to come by, but we're going to keep our eyes on them to do what we can. Task number 3 is focused on the Metro Animal Shelter. We understand we can't reconstruct the Metro Animal Shelter in 2 years, but we can at least start some discussions about that with our partners, talk about what it is exactly we want and exactly what the other partners are willing to support, both support in terms of the delivery and also finance. Beyond that, we also want to do some reworking of the administration inside. We do want to better define the roles of volunteers, do a volunteer program there, but sometimes there are some confusions about what they're supposed to do versus what staff's supposed to do, things like that. We think we can revise that process. We also want to get some progress done on our licensure. Pet licensure is, of course, it's the law. We do encourage it. It does help us organize as far as pets and finding their owners, but we know that there's a low percentage of pets getting licensed right now. We'd like to get that under control by starting a process by which you can get your license to the veterinarian and also just a better software system. So again, trying to keep this as tangible as possible as far as we think we can get this far. No doubt with all these goals, there's other things we would love to be able to do and things that we will continue to work toward. But in terms of defining what we can get done in 2 years, I think that's reasonable. Moving on, community amenities and recreational opportunities. We had this one scoped out originally as a broader discussion about all sorts of buildings and infrastructure in the city. We are narrowing this one down a bit more to be, on the one hand, a discussion of public art. In some of our discussions with staff, we decided that this is one area of amenities where really some greater clarity as far as the system and policies for what we do in art, such as the Navarro contribution, how exactly we have those discussions, how exactly we analyze what to do and how to do and where to situate that sort of facility. And likewise, how we would handle art that we ourselves want to sponsor for whatever reason. When we had some public art, we would want to make sure we have policies in place. And we think that would be helpful for, in terms of how we present our city and how we present, make things public. Also here, we do want to finish the recreation master plan. Certainly, we've had aspects of that already this evening, but getting the recreation master plan is a sense for both how all these facilities, how they interact, how they're going to develop together over the next short to long term would be helpful. And my apologies, I was planning going through them all, but is now a good time for me to take a break and see if there are any questions on the first 5? Keep going? Keep going. Okay, thank you. Moving on. The next one on this was the deal with fire department, fire station 1. We tried to nail that one down more specifically to get some funding for design, get some funding for land acquisition if necessary, and at least have a contractor design to do the design work. We're not going to have a rebuild that. It's too large of a project. It would be quite expensive. We don't have the funding figured out. And so again, trying to keep it within the 2-year time frame, but we do think land and design is more useful. Moving to sustainability goals, wastewater treatment plant. First of all, obviously we're going to continue those discussions with DEQ. We're going to continue those discussions with EPA as far as other regulatory things which may be upcoming. But in the meantime, we did want to nail down that we want to do the dynamic rate modeling. The council is very accustomed to us doing dynamic rate modeling for water distribution, sewer, and for solid waste activities, bale fill and refuse. That's 4 activities, but we don't have one for the 5th, which is the wastewater treatment plant, where we don't really explain to you how our decisions work in terms of the rates that are set for charging for wastewater from the member entities, particularly ourselves, and then how that turns into operational capital plans for the facility. So we do want to make that the 5th group that we present to you when we do our rate studies. So it would have to be a little bit different. It is fundamentally a different kind of operation. It's less public facing. It's all about serving both the city itself internally, but also the other regional towns. But still getting that set up and presented in a way that's consistent with the other utilities, we think would be very helpful. In addition to that, when we set those rates, keeping an eye towards perhaps starting to build a fund balance that would be ready and able to at least take the edge off of a major infrastructure need, if indeed we have those regulatory things that come down, which require us to do major overhauls in the plant. To start having a fund balance that will help us to fund that. Moving on, on the stormwater program, we did just talk about this. The stormwater program, how we get it under control, what we can do in the next 2 years. Absolutely, I think what we need to do is refresh the studies that we've already done on the stormwater system and come back and present to you with what those studies are saying and what we think the recommendations ought to be. So that's not, again, taking us all the way across the finish line. It doesn't do everything that we, as far as actually having a system up and running, but it is a good first step, and it does re-engage with the issue. How do you get started? This is the first step. That's number 8, reducing water waste and promoting equity through tiered water rates. This one we can do. We can revise the water rates. We can get a study done and come back to you with a proposal for how to do this. Next, we have presenting options to encourage additional recycling. Certainly, we do want to come back with a slate of recommendations for you, including some partnership opportunities with WETQ. We have a regional recycling facility, not just a regional waste facility. Maintaining city buildings. We acquired a software system and we worked with Alpha to help us track the current state of our buildings, both in terms of their condition and also their current layouts, the current the amenities that are present in every building. We want to make sure that we're fully activating that, fully using that, making sure that that is up to date as a way to inform our building discussion in terms of our building investments. We have money set aside in 1/17, more than $5 million. We want to be smart about how we spend that money. And having those systems in place should help to keep us making the right decisions at the right time. Moving on, developing sources of revenue externally. We had a number of discussions about this, exactly what we need to do here. Our goal with this primarily is understanding. We want a team involved in the city that, among city staff, we truly understand how these different kinds of funding systems work. Certainly, we already get grants, we already get donations, we already have stuff, but sometimes we don't have a single person or a single group that understands all of them, or they've had experience with one kind of donation but not another, that sort of thing. We want to try to share information internally, to kind of come up with policies in a way to make decisions quickly, to assess, all right, in terms of going after external money, what seems like a good bet? What seems like a good use of it? Which grants are worth going after? Which ones? Also, if we see a grant or we see an opportunity to get a donation or sponsorship, what should the rules be? Should we have rules when it comes to sponsorships for things like, naming rights or recognition? Do we need to have policies in place so that we can make those decisions quickly? And we know how to spend our time. Likewise, we have a similar plan for developing what I'll call internal sources of revenue, which is mostly things like unconventional ways of raising money. We certainly have the 1 cent, which is raised from the taxpayers, but other communities have pursued additional 1 cents through either specific purpose or economic developments or other sorts of special sales taxes as authorized by the legislature. Certain other communities go into debt or with bond issuance and that sort of thing. Again, we need to fully understand that. We need to have a team that truly understands how those systems work, how they've worked elsewhere, what are the legalities. And then likewise, if there's direction from council about what we should or should not be looking at, what we should or should not be doing, we want to make sure we've asked those questions of you before we proceed with saying, all right, look, we have this need. We think that this one is appropriate for a special funding source. This is how we would propose to go after it. Moving on from there. Smart decision making by engaging with our comprehensive plans. We had another very spirited discussion about this task in particular, about exactly how to apply it. One of the things that came out of that was absolutely we do want to proceed with the original proposal of getting those plans off the shelf, dusting them off. We do have many comprehensive plans across the city for various different things, recreation plans, long-range transportation plans, land use plans, zoning plans. We want to get them off the shelf. We want to be looking at them, be familiar with them. And if necessary, updating them. But beyond that, we also want to be referring. So in a sense, we are actually scaling this up from 2 weeks ago. We're not scaling it back. I hope you guys are okay with that. But the idea is that we would actually start a process of acknowledging plans when they are relevant to issues that are coming before you. So whereas you'll see your council members currently, council memos currently have a list of standard things which we always talk about. And we'd like to add comprehensive plans to that list so that when things come forward which are relevant to a comprehensive plan, we have that reference so that you can see that, yes, we did look at it, that it is consistent, or if not, how it is not, how we are adapting as the case may be. Again, to try to make sure that we're making smart decisions that are compliant, not just with the moment and the moment of need, but the long-term goal of what are we trying to accomplish here? And all we leaving cross purposes by making a short-term decision that's not pursuing the long-term need. Beyond that, facilitate development through public-private partnerships. We do still intend to try to reimagine our leases and to try to come up with an ideal for what our leases. When we do lease to nonprofit, we do quite a lot. We have leases where they're for a nominal fee. We do want to reimagine that to come up with an idealized version of what that lease would look like, and then trying to catalog our existing leases and sort of comparing them to that ideal. And likewise, a similar system for our funding agreements. So if we are funding an agency, a nonprofit, supporting them through operational capital dollars. What does that agreement look like? We have it written down, and if so, how does that look compared to our ideal, or what we're trying to achieve there? Moving on, now with the citizen engagement. We had 3 tasks there. The first was about sort of a holistic review of our communications, but more specifically, looking to consolidate messaging across social media and also more generally making sure that we're providing good, high quality information sharing with our citizens. And so we did want to focus to start at the website. We do consider the website to be our central communications tool. It is certainly well visited, well used by the citizens, but we want to make it modern. We want to keep it modern. We want to keep it accurate. It is a reference that people can use. And so we need to do some of those things that we did recommend that we're going to pursue back in April. So definitely want to get the search function fixed. And we also want to fix the utility system, make that more user friendly, because frankly, that is still the top thing that people use our website for. If they want to pay their water bill, we want to help them pay their water bill. We want to make it easy for them, not an aggravating experience. As we move on, citizen feedback loops. Certainly, this idea of having public input into our decision making was part of the council bill, so we do want to pursue that. But in the spirit of trying to keep things regulated and not overly ambitious, we did focus on promising just one, where we do one in a comprehensive manner, where one decision at your request, we will get feedback from the public in a comprehensive manner, so that we can have a dynamic conversation about that. Obviously, we can go further than that and in time allows, and if it's easy to figure out the system. But at least doing one and getting one under the belt would be very helpful. And then last but not least, technology solutions for customs communication. That's the idea of having custom communication per individual, with the idea that different people are going to be finding more topics more or less relevant, more or less interesting. We want to talk to the right person about the right thing at the right time. For that, a preliminary tool for that is going to be something called the Munis utility or the resident access system. That's certainly the vast majority of our citizens are on our utility system. And this is an existing technology that we are looking at pursuing. It'll be a good first test, a good way to say, look, we've got our citizens now in a system where we communicate to them through that system about utility. Let's figure out how to use it. Let's figure out how to maximize utility. And then perhaps from there, leveraging onto other systems or other means of communicating with systems in a more one-on-one kind of manner. It's a bit more custom to what the citizens are doing. So that is my high-speed review of the 17 tasks that we are still proposing.
That was the quick one?
Yes, it was. I can start again if you want me to.
No, you can't. No, actually, you can't.
I'm sure I can keep my time, but thank you, sir. No, but I think we're now at a point where we are awaiting council's feedback. Does this seem like a reasonable list? There are a number of solutions if it's not. Certainly, we have 17 items, we don't need them all, maybe, or perhaps we need to refine them further.
It certainly seems a lot better than what you had came with a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, you guys put some work into this to get it narrowed down, and our concern, like you had mentioned, was for your and the staff's well-being, and that we're not overwhelming you, but also having unattainable goals can lead to frustration. And so we didn't want that for you either. So this does seem much more amenable. It seems much more attainable. And Carter answered my question earlier about, I just hate to have some things out there that I realize we're never going to get to. And, like the stormwater, for instance. And so I don't want our staff feeling frustrated because there's this goal out there and we're not going to get to it. You know what I mean? So this seems much more attainable. I like this much better. Personally, I don't know how the rest of the counselors feel, but this seems doable. Anybody? Everybody's, yeah. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Is there somebody?
Well, yeah, but I thought you were,
Oh, I'm good.
I thought you had like a an eyebrow raised to get mayor's attention.
Are you giving her the nod?
I think it's great. I think that you know, helps, it makes it easier for me to say, yes, I think we're on the right track when there's just a little bit more, of the specifics laid out here. So, I feel really good about it. I'm particularly enthusiastic about the, revisiting and re-engaging with the primary planning documents. I think that, we've, you know, as I browse through ones that I haven't looked at since I first came on council, like, we have some great stuff in a lot of those studies that we've commissioned. And, I think it'll be really helpful to us and hopefully internally as well to keep referring them to build, you know, a level of understanding of what's in them and make sure that we, all kind of remain on the same page. As I had later, or actually from last year's goals or last 2 years' goals, you know, when we adopt a plan, like, so what? What does that mean for us exactly? Like, we adopted the tourism master plan. Like, where is the accountability? Like, what does that mean for us? I think that'll, you know, adding that in to say, like, reminder, this is in the tourism master plan right here. I think that'll be really helpful because those studies cost a lot of money too. So it'll be very, helpful, I think, to keep them top of mind and, a good reminder to all of us. So I feel that's not a lot of it, but that stands out to me as something that I think is really, it'll probably take a lot of work to go through all of those and you know, catalog them and everything you said, but I think it'll be well worth it.
When having an office in the Casper Business Center, watching our staff at work every day and the things that they literally are hit with on a daily basis, having at least a goal thing, you go back and go, oof, you know what I mean? Because there's so many things going on all the time from so many different directions. And so having like a master plan to follow, you know, am I on course? I just think it's a really good thing. And I like them when they're attainable. I just think it's better for you psychologically, just all the way around. So with that said, sir.
Just an observation that, I would really like us to think about, just from a strategic point of view as a council, to think about, I mean, the summarize, you know, the amount of work that the staff has done is incredible. And I appreciate the summary and the report, on the completion of tasks. But what I'd like us to think about is, as a council, really more than staff. I mean, staff probably has some input and answers on this, but as a council, I'd really like us to think about the measurability of these goals. In other words, what can I count? What's measurable? What could I count that's actually a key indicator that this goal was attained? In other words, for livability, for sustainability, and for citizen engagement. What would be the dials, if you will, that I could see improving or, you know, increasing or decreasing, that really tell me Casper is a more livable community, or, you know, that our resources are more sustainable, or that we have more or better citizen engagement. So that's just something I'd like us to think about.
Well, and I can tell you, last year you had that chart that kind of, he didn't present that tonight, but he does do a chart that shows how there's some measurability and it shows how it fit in.
Okay.
And he'll present that, I'm assuming, at the end of the year. Oh, well, it'll be the end of 2 years now to kind of show us where we're at, but we got to see that last year, I think it was, right?
Yes, in answer to your question, Mayor, yes, we will be doing that. That is absolutely the next step. We were holding up a little bit on that because we wanted to make sure we had your blessing. But then to address Councilor Vaughn's questions, the chart that the mayor is referring to is, we took our 13 goals, 13 called groups of goals, and we broke them down to 98 steps with the idea of things like, okay, if we're going to go out to, if we're going to do a police station, we need to, first of all, assess some sites. We'll come back with a report. We need to figure out a budget, come back with that. We need to, and so on and so forth. With each of those being specific steps on the level goal. And so certainly in terms of demonstrating progress, we want to make sure that there are steps that we can share with you as we're going, not just, you know, well, thanks for the direction. We'll see you in 2 years, but not how we did. We do want to be able to demonstrate that as we go. In terms of the other point you made, which I didn't want to comment on, you mentioned the idea like, is it working? This question of, are we doing something that actually makes asking more difficult, or measurably improving certain things? I think it's a very good point. I think that some of these lend themselves well to that sort of performance measure. I'll mention recycling specifically. Certainly, we already measure how much recycling goes we have.
Yeah.
And that would be the kind of thing where it would be fairly straightforward as to measure as that amount changes. Certainly, some of these others might be a little bit more tricky, but I do think that we can take that advice and guidance as we go ahead and try to see what we can do as far as performance measurement, not just attaining staff level path.
Thank you.
Counselor Ingebretson?
So I came across something that I was actually just going to talk about and have the staffs, but it fits in task number 16. So I'm going to say it now. There is this program, it's called Flash Vote. And I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
But so what this does is, and I feel like it would be perfect for citizen engagement. This is for us to do surveys as a city, but it goes to all citizens, whether they're voting or not. And it goes, and it's for telephone, mobile, and email, so it goes to everybody, but you get your results in 48 hours. And they usually have like a contract or whatever, but it's not terribly expensive. And so I just thought that this would be something to look at, because when I spoke with the gentleman, he was saying like $10,000, and you could get up to 6 surveys per year for that 10,000, and which is only a couple $1,000 per survey. And so it's something that I thought that maybe we could do surveys with the citizens about all kinds of things. And so that would help our citizen engagement. So I don't know information, but it's also on the internet.
Sure. Mayor, Council. Sure. Absolutely, that's the kind of thing we're looking at here, as far as getting that process up and running, which will might include software service. We do know we want to be in a different situation than we are now, as far as how much feedback we're getting and how we're using that. And so whether it be Flash Vote or something similar, that kind of thing, I think would be very helpful.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Sir.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Pete, and everyone that helped put, super comprehensive, lots of great stuff. I don't have any input on what should be removed or added necessarily. I agree with Lisa. It's a great recommendation to get more. That's one of my biggest frustrations since I've been on council is the input that we get, other than a few sparse emails and some folks showing up to council. It's just really hard to get a barometer on what the public is thinking about the decisions that we're making. So anything that can help make it easier to get that input from citizens, I'm all on board for. I also really appreciate Amber's comments about using our plans and referring to those a lot more. When I first got onto council, I read through Generation Casper plan, which cites most of those plans that were at least created at that time, and did my best to read through all of those plans, but that's been 2.5 years, and y'all have made me do a lot of reading since then, so it's hard to remember a lot of the information that I gleaned from that. So my experience has been that a lot of those plans are in like PDF format, and they're accessible sometimes, but they're really hard to refer back to. Like if you do a Google search or something, you're not going to pull up the long-term transportation plan. You have to find that in the Generation Casper plan and then open up a PDF attachment. It'd be awesome if we were able to plug all of that content from all of those plans into some sort of database that can be easily referred to. It makes, I think about all the potential that like this new Verizon artificial intelligence language, learning tools and stuff, it'd be cool to be able to just ask a question of a database that we put together on all these plans that we already have and be able to easily refer to that information without having to, you know, Liz, I don't know if she's got a big old book of all of our plans, it wouldn't surprise me, but flipping through there with all the tabs and stuff, I just imagine there's probably a lot easier ways to refer to that information. The only task that just something that came to mind as you were reading through the tasks, specifically the one on sustainability and reducing water waste. I don't want to shoehorn something in. We got plenty on our plate already to take a look at, but I realized that we hadn't, maybe this is a question for Zulema, or maybe you could answer it. We talked about xeriscaping and transformation of public parks and stuff like that a lot the past year or two, and we haven't talked about that recently, so I didn't know if that's still, that we already moved to smart irrigation for the majority of our public areas, or, I just didn't see that outline. We talked about it a lot the past year or two, so was just curious if that folded in at all.
Mayor?
Please.
So, in terms of our smart irrigation, so our baseline controller project has kicked off. It is in progress. But we are working with IT and park staff to install controllers throughout the system. Albeit a little slower than we would have hoped, especially given the moisture this spring. But that is in progress, and we're hoping to yield positive results from that. In terms of some of our park repurposing, I think that was kind of a harder exercise than any of us really imagined. Of course, we engaged the Parks and Rec Board to try to help us with some ideas and looked at a couple of different options, but we really struggled to pin down specific alternative uses that could actually conserve water. And so that is actually being wrapped into our Parks and Rec master plan, in which we can have a consultant sort of identify areas of what I'm going to call overservice, for lack of a better word, where those parks that are maybe manicured turf now could be converted to an alternative use that could potentially utilize less water. So we're going to have the consultant take a look at some of that stuff and help us to identify areas where it might make sense to go native. It might make sense to do xeriscaping or some other alternative landscaping that could reduce water.
Appreciate it. Looking forward to the plan.
I suppose it added in.
We got plenty on there. As long as it's captured by the master plan and as long as we're referring to it in the future, that's cool. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Pete, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Zulema, thank you for the impromptu appearance. Assuming that was information only, so we'll move on to agenda review, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Counselors, as you look at your grid document here, we've got some items coming up that would be of interest to you. Certainly the second reading of the 1 cent discussion is occurring on the 1st. You'll notice that Parks Master Plan MOU that I had referred to earlier in the agenda is a pre-meeting heads up for the 1st. And you'll anticipate seeing that later that night as well. If you'll turn with me to the next page, a couple work sessions on your horizon as well. The 8th, we've got the Community Readiness Grant proposal ostensibly for discussion pertaining, it says the Wilo Sports Ranch, but really it's really oriented towards the infrastructure needs of the entire development area there. They certainly are a primary partner. We have another installment of Zulema's presentations on that evening as well. And I think that's rec, it's rec generally, isn't it? Or rising pipe. Okay, yeah, very good, very good. Looking at the 22nd, we have some other items that we want you to be thinking about as well. Certainly as it relates to the camping ordinance, that's an item that we've discussed, at least theoretically, and would also be in conjunction with the homeless discussions we've been having offline from here. A follow-up item with respect to snow plowing, we anticipate taking up on the 22nd as well. And then your parking garage services vendor would like to visit with you on the 22nd as well and give you an update as to where we're at and what a potential renewal of our contract with them would look like. That's on the immediate horizon. If you wouldn't mind looking on the back page and make sure that some of the items that you have an interest in particularly is captured at least on the back page, or you have questions about, or potential proposals you need to make to council. This page, the future agenda items page, is meant to stimulate all those thoughts. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Just one question on the 22nd, we're gonna do the snowplow ordinance and the naming and the route discussion. I think Lisa had mentioned that. And then on the back, I see where there's a naming city equipment. Is that in addition to our plows, or is that just a repeat?
I would say that is a repeat.
Okay.
Certainly, if council has additional things you'd like us to consider in that vein, we will.
Just the car you drive. We need to come up with a name for that.
I've already got one. Yeah.
Okay, I thank you very much. Do we have anything on legislative review?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, we'll go with council around the table.
Actually, could I-
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
I just had one question on agenda review. We're doing the MRG request on consent next meeting. And from what I recall, that discussion we had a couple of months ago, and I thought by this time the SkyWest airline was supposed to have upgraded their airline and stuff. So I'm just curious if anyone had an update on if there's been any progress made since we had that chat a couple months ago.
Well, I tell you what, Mr. Mayor, Counselor, if it's okay with you, we can get you apprised of that in the pre-meeting next week, if that's okay.
Yeah, in fact, I think they were supposed to have their big jet July 1, right?
That's what again.
That's what I recollect.
We already made the commitments. I don't want to be like pulling the rug out from anyone because I think we had agreed to, if they didn't need it for the subsidy, to put it towards marketing. But my understanding was that should have occurred by now based on our chat. So I was just curious if anyone had an update.
So you know what that actually is, that MRG request? It escaped me. What actually is that? Because we've already done that, I thought, or agreed to do it, and it was a one-time.
Mr. Mayor, certainly that's true. And I would suggest that the formal adoption of the agreement is what this item is.
Okay.
And we will have some more information to share with you pursuant to the evolution of this topic, which probably not surprising that is an evolving conversation.
Okay. All right, thank you. Good
You
for
bet.
bringing that up. I forgot, so.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Councilor Ingebretson, council around the table.
At the contractors board meeting last week and just kind of reporting on 4 new residential permits for new builds in June, which brings us up to a whole whopping 13. Business is booming. That's all I have.
Well, 13's better than where we were, right? Oh. Councilor Jensen.
I don't really, nothing.
Okay, then moving on. Councilor Gamroth.
Stop. You need to be.
You said I have nothing. I have nothing usually means I have nothing. Do you have something? Okay, Councilor Gamroth.
Thanks. I had a Casper Housing Authority board meeting last Thursday. They had 2,400 people show up for the Father's Day event at Washington Park. So I think I mentioned it after that event, but really good turnout. They had a float in the parade, went well. Just waiting on asbestos testing by WCDA to move forward with the Willard School project that they have in mind. They were supposed to have gotten that those results by the end of last week. I haven't heard anything from him yet, but you know, just trying to make sure to check all the boxes and abide by all the red tape and stuff. Obviously, was hoping to move forward quicker on that project, but hopefully we're getting to that point where they can start putting shovels in the ground and getting some work done. Saw a couple of my colleagues at the Mark Wills concert at David Street last Thursday. That was the 3rd concert at David Street within that week time span. So made 2 of the 3. And it was really well attended. Mark was a great performer. Just another great concert at David Street. So props to that team they were really busy that week. They had their own concert. Jake, I forget that guy's name. I didn't make it to that one. So they had a concert Thursday. They had Yellow Wolf and Jeffree Star stuff Friday. They had the Governor's Magpul event Saturday. They had, I think they still did their farmer's market Tuesday. They had a concert Thursday. So those guys just been really busy over there and been doing a great job. Venue staying clean, not seeing any issues. And so props to them. I also attended Casper Collins Day last Saturday. It was my first time attending the event. It was a really good one. Really hot. So I tried to stick in the shade, but yeah, it was cool. There were opportunities to, carry a hand cart around, and they did a little shootout reenactment, and actors in period clothing. Bless those guys, man. They were wearing some military wool outfits. I would have keeled over if I was dressed like those guys. So props to all of them.
Where was that?
At Fort Casper.
Just kidding. We just had to say it.
Okay. Yeah, Casper Collins Day at Fort Casper Museum. So, and it was free, admission that day. So I would encourage you, if you didn't make it this year or haven't in the past, to check it out next year. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Bond?
Just a reminder of the municipal band concert this Thursday. Hopefully the weather will hold out for a change and be a good concert, 7:30 Washington Park. And then I didn't, because of technical difficulties, I didn't get to comment last week around the 1 cent discussion. So just wanted to say that, my initial reaction is to kind of support the resolution or the ordinance. With the 1 cent, we are getting a few emails with some constituents who were not in favor of making that a permanent tax. So yeah, it's kind of like we've been talking about. It's kind of a conundrum to know, kind of what is the general sentiment among the citizens, among residents of Casper about making that permanent and that decision. So I'm anxious to hear public input, either at the council meeting or via email or phone call or whatever. Got to get a sense of that. So last week I was feeling like, oh, this is a no-brainer. It's 70% approval, 50-year history or 40-year history, and it's good for the city. It's needed for infrastructure and for lots of services. So more to come, I guess.
That it?
That's it.
Thanks, sir. Counselor Kathy?
The only thing I had going on was I was supposed to have a CPU meeting in the morning, and it has been canceled due to lack of business. So that's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Counselor Haskins?
Okay, I went to the public health on Thursday evening. Dr. Jamada has left Wyoming, so welcome, Dr. Kirsch. Thanks for stepping up for their board. They really needed her, so good timing. Dr. Dowell did report, we had gotten a comment about turkeys and avian flu. Just so you know, according to Dr. Dowell, no, you cannot get avian flu from a turkey. Can they have it? Yes. Can they give it to you? No. So no worries on that one. Not that we want to keep them, but at least they're not giving you avian flu. And I believe it's the balloon roundup this weekend. So no sleeping in, get up early, watch the balloons, go to the downtown. It's always sweaty hot. It's my favorite. That's all I have.
I wasn't opposed to balloons. I was just opposing getting up early. Go ahead.
I know, but they have to.
Counselor Pollock?
Thank you. Ray and I both attended the LGBTQ Advisory Council meeting on Friday. Update for you there. The group, last time they came and presented to us, they showed you all the results of the most current human rights HRC Municipal Equality Index report that comes out every year, which didn't reflect some of the initiatives that we've taken in the last couple of years, including forming the council and passing non-discrimination. So just to update you, we have submitted updated information to that group so that the report that comes out should more accurately reflect the changes that this council has made. And I think it will be pretty favorable for us when we see those numbers. So as mentioned by the group, it's just one metric, and I think there's again not interest in necessarily advocating that we base all of our decisions off of that one particular report, but it is certainly, you know, one tool that we have to kind of get some ideas and consider what might be helpful to our community. So we're looking forward to having a more updated representation of where we're at when that next report comes out. Oh, for shouting out events, Wyoming Symphony Orchestra has Wine on the River on Wednesday. So you really can fill your social calendar pretty sufficiently this week as well. So I think that it's a summer full of activity here. That's all.
Perfect.
Vice Mayor.
Amber hit the nail on that, and that's, so I don't have anything else.
All right, Jim. I just have a couple things. I said it earlier, but in case you weren't tuned in, we sent some of our emergency fire stuff over to help Bar None, who had a very serious grass fire that was threatening a lot of structures. And I was coming in from Gillette last night, and the smoke in the valley was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it was making that much smoke. But Peter Boyer, the mayor of Bar None, was very thankful, reached out to me today and made sure that I said thank you to all our city officials and to our fire department for the hard work they did in helping save their town. So we want to give a shout out to them. Mark Wills, I went to that concert Thursday night. The DDA has really done just a spectacular job this year with the amount of entertainment and the level of entertainment that they brought in this year. And I ran into Councilor Gamrot down there, and it was quite a crowd. And there was alcohol available and food trucks and kids and people of all ages. It was really pretty spectacular, and the guy put on a great show. So it was nice to be there for that. Friday, I spoke out at the airport for the Wyoming Life Flight. They just had their 40th anniversary on Friday. And that is extremely significant to us because first off, any business to survive for 40 years in our climate here is it's amazing anyway. But considering our remoteness of living in Wyoming and having that ability to get you out of here and get you where you can have critical care and get you taken care of to where they get you to go is it's astounding. It's needed. It's necessary. And we're really thankful they're here. So congratulations to Air Method, who owns Wyoming Life Flight and over 300 bases across the country. So we appreciate them. And I just signed a letter today for Advanced Casper that's being sent off to Nevada as our airport is trying to acquire the Reno Air Show. Reno is no longer doing it. It attracts 68,000 people a year, and we're up for it. So we're doing what we can to try to attract them into our community and allowing us to put on that air show every year. And of course, anybody that flies knows we have really good air. So that's it. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be next Tuesday, August 1st, here in the Lyric Council Chambers at 6 p.m. with a pre-meeting at 5:30. Thank you all. Be well, be safe. Have a great week.